Life in the blood and flesh workshop? 2 words. Absolutely disgusting. The flies here are the size of soybeans. They don't just buzz around you. They slam into your face like tiny, furry bullets. The ground is basically a soup of blood, guts, and mystery sludge. Every step you take, your foot comes up trailing half a pound of sticky black mud. It's like walking through Satan's kitchen drain. But me? I slid into this filthy paradise like a fish into water. Smooth. Natural. Like I was born for this. Every morning, I drag myself to the main courtyard for group martial arts practice. And let me tell you, my performance is a masterpiece of mediocrity. While everyone else is doing their fancy, calm spirit, nimble steps, routine, I'm out there punching the air like a constipated ox trying to push through a brick wall. Every fist I throw looks heavy, clumsy, and absolutely hopeless. The instructors glance at me and physically wince. Perfect. Exactly what I want them to see. But come afternoon, when I step into the butchery, I become a bone-splitting machine. Bang! 80-pound cleaver comes down. Iron horn bull leg bone. Split clean in 2 like a chopstick. Done. Next. Big Lee, the guy next to me who was dragging a dead pig with an iron hook, nearly jumped out of his skin. Brother Wong, what did they feed you growing up? Take it easy, man. This work never ends. Save some energy. When payday comes, I'll take you to Spring Breeze Alley to hear some music. The lady's there. Heh. I wiped a splatter of blood off my face with the back of my hand and gave him my best dumb guy grin. Nah, Big Lee, I'm just a simple man. Small brain, big arms. I just like working hard. If I work more, I get extra rice at dinner. Huh. You're a real honest one, he said, shaking his head as he walked away. I could practically hear him thinking, what a dumb ox. The second he turned around, my stupid grin vanished like it was never there. My cleaver flicked, quick, precise, surgical. Plop. A beautiful chunk of bone marrow, dark red, glistening, absolutely loaded with nutrients, dropped right into the waste bucket. And while I was at it, I used a rag to swipe a little clot of crimson scale pig heart blood off the edge of the cutting board. Into the bucket it went. Spring Breeze Alley? Ladies and music? Please. With that kind of free time, I'd rather boil myself another pot of full recovery mega soup. These old-timers have no idea. The scraps they toss into the gutter every day? The offal and marrow and blood clots they treat like garbage? In my eyes, that stuff is premium cultivation fuel. That's liquid gold. That's the kind of material that could punch a hole through the king of hell's death register. With my daily bamboo tube of secret bone marrow supplement, not only am I not getting worn down by this brutal butchery work, my chi and blood are burning hotter every day. I'm basically a human furnace at this point. Then one evening, everything changed. The sunset was red as blood, turning the muddy slaughterhouse yard into something that looked like an actual crime scene. We'd just put down our cleavers and were lining up at the well to wash off the day's gore, joking about whether tonight's soup would have any actual meat in it. Aghh, a scream ripped through the air. Not a normal scream. This was the sound of an animal being skinned alive. It came from behind a pile of broken wooden crates near the well, and it shut everyone up instantly. Water buckets hit the ground. Heads turned. I gripped my freshly cleaned cleaver and looked through the crowd. It was old Zhao. Now, old Zhao wasn't actually old. The sect doesn't take anyone over 20, and he'd been here about 8 or 9 years, 27, 28 at most. Should have been in his prime. But years of failed breakthroughs and reckless training had drained him dry. His hair was already half white. His back was hunched like a shrimp. His face had more wrinkles than a walnut. He looked like a shriveled 50-year-old man trapped in a young man's timeline. And right now, he looked like something out of a nightmare. Old Zhao was thrashing in the mud, clawing at his own throat with hands curled up like chicken feet. His skin had turned this horrible purple-red color, and you could see every vein bulging under the surface, squirming like a nest of snakes about to burst. His eyes were practically popping out of his skull. Black blood was spraying from his nose and mouth, and mixed in with it were little bits of organs, tiny shreds of his own insides. Help! Help me! Squad leader Zheng. Save me. He was rolling in the mud like a dying maggot, except his legs weren't working at all. They just dragged behind him, completely paralyzed. Boneless. What are you all standing around for? Move! Squad leader Zheng too shoved through the crowd with his boning knife, took one look at old Zhao on the ground, and his meaty face twisted into a knot. He crouched down and ripped open old Zhao's shirt. On old Zhao's chest, several thick blood vessels were bulging up like mountain ridges, covered in dead gray bruises. Tiger wolf pill. Zheng Tu's eye twitched. He sucked in a breath, then exploded. Are you out of your mind? Your body's already dried up like a dead well. You can't even squeeze out a fart. And you went to the black market to buy that death pill to force a breakthrough. Everyone around went pale the moment they heard Tiger wolf pill. They backed up like the ground was on fire. Tiger wolf pill. The black market's most famous, cost your money and your life, poison. It squeezes out every drop of hidden potential in your body, even burns your remaining lifespan, to fake a surge of chi and blood powerful enough to smash through a martial arts bottleneck. If you're young, strong, and rich, maybe a 5% chance of breaking through, and then you spend a fortune on medicinal food to patch yourself back up afterward. But if you're someone like old Zhao, already running on empty, broke as dirt, that rampaging drug energy has nowhere to go. It floods back into your organs like a dam breaking, and it shreds every meridian in your body. I couldn't accept it. Old Zhao choked out through mouthfuls of bloody foam, gripping Zheng Tu's greasy pant leg with the last of his strength. His cloudy eyes were full of desperate, furious grief. 8 years. Brother Zheng. I've been rotting in this gutter for 8 years. I was so close. Just one thin layer of paper away. Just a little bit more. His voice got weaker and weaker until it was just a meaningless hiss of leaking air. His hand slipped off the pant leg. His head lolled to the side. The light in his eyes scattered and went out. Done. Zheng Tu stepped back with a look of disgust, wiped the blood off his pants on some dry straw, and stood up with a cold snort. Meridians completely shattered. Chi and blood pooled into dead water. Even an immortal would shake his head at this. He scanned the circle of terrified, silent butchers. Not a shred of pity on his face, just annoyance, like old Zhao had inconvenienced him by dying. Bigly, Erju, go dig through his bedroll and find whatever copper coins he's got left. Scrape it all together. Then report to the outer court office and the enforcement hall. Tell them some laborer lost his mind, ate black market drugs, and died from cultivation deviation. Once the manager stamps the paperwork and crosses his name off the registry, by the cheapest straw mat you can find, wrap him up and dump him in the mass grave outside the city walls after dark. Let the wild dogs deal with him. Squad leader, that's. Bigly swallowed hard, looking uncomfortable. Old Zhao scrimped and saved every coin he had. We're really going to take even the mat money from his own pocket? Nonsense. You think I'm paying for his funeral? Squad leader Zheng Tu spat right in Big Li's face, eyes bulging like a toad. People die from cultivation mishaps in 8 extremes, sect, all the time. He killed himself. Who else is there to blame? Hurry up and follow protocol, so I can go eat my damn dinner. Big Li and Erju tucked their necks in like scolded turtles and scurried off to dig through old Zhao's sad little bedroll for whatever pitiful coins he'd left behind. And just like that, old Zhao's body lay cooling in the mud, a dark red pool of blood spreading underneath him. Flies already circling. Business as usual. The whole butchery went silent. Every single one of those old slaughtermen turned away without a word. Didn't even finish washing the blood off themselves. Just trudged toward the dining hall with their heads down, feet dragging like they had lead boots on. Nobody was cracking jokes anymore. Nobody was talking about soup. Because old Zhao's death wasn't just old Zhao's death. It was a bloody mirror held up in front of every single one of us bottom-tier disciples. No money for good medicine. No master standing beside you to guide your chi and catch your mistakes. You want to cross that martial arts class barrier? Your only option is to gamble your life on a microscopic sliver of dumb luck. Win, and you're somebody. Lose, and you're a straw mat in a mass grave with your last few coins stripped off your corpse. I stood there gripping my cleaver, staring at the body, and felt cold down to my bones. This world doesn't care about your hot-blooded martial arts dreams. There's no inspiring hero's journey here. This is a zero-margin-for-error death race. One wrong step, and there's no safety net, just a straight drop to oblivion. Late that night, cold moon hanging overhead. The blood and flesh workshop was dead quiet. In my little shack next to the sewage pit, my clay pot was bubbling away. Today's batch of bone marrow paste had cooked down into a thick, dark purple sludge. The smell? Imagine someone boiled a dead rat that had been sitting in the sun for 10 days. I lifted the lid, didn't even flinch, picked up that scalding pot, and chugged the whole thing like cheap liquor. Boom. The heat exploded in my stomach and instantly converted into pure blood chi, greedily filling up everything I'd burned through during the day. My muscles swelled. Veins crawled across my skin like dragons. I tossed the pot aside, walked to the center of my shack, planted both feet in the mud, and sank into my stance. Deep breath. Drop the shoulders. Sink the elbows. Chest in, back straight. The two principles standing stake. In the darkness, I was an immovable iron tower. Golden light flickered in my mind. Diligently practiced two principles stance once. EXP 1, current progress. Not yet learned, 96/100ths. Yesterday, I figured out my limit. With the nightly bone marrow boost, I can squeeze out about 60 proficiency points per day. Today, I'd poured almost everything into standing practice. I was going to push this breathing technique past the finish line in one shot. Minutes crawled by. Hours dissolved. Outside, stray cats screamed like ghosts. Honestly sounded like old Zhao's restless spirit howling from the mass grave. Creepy as hell. But inside, my mind was a frozen lake. Not a single ripple. I don't need to be like old Zhao, swallowing suicide pills for a hope that doesn't exist. I don't need to be like those old butchers, numb and resigned, just waiting to die. I just need to stand here. Like a machine. A stupidly precise, terrifyingly patient machine. Feel every breath sink with my bones. Practice two principles stance once. EXP 1, current progress. Not yet learned, 99/100ths. One final, long breath traced the technique's specific path through my lungs, completed a full cycle, and slowly sank into my dantian. Boing. It was like a massive ancient bell, rusted over, forgotten for centuries, got slammed by a war hammer inside my skull. Golden light poured across my vision like a waterfall smashing through a dam. So bright I could barely keep my eyes open. Diligently practiced two principles stance once. Force correction feedback. EXP 1 ding. Two principles stance has broken through to learned. Current progress. Learned. 1/1000th. My whole body shuddered. This wasn't like when 8 extremes small frame hit learned. That felt like someone running a cheese grater across my flesh. This was completely different. This was a deep, organic, earned transformation from the inside out. My legs felt like they'd grown invisible roots straight into the earth. The joints in my hips and waist popped and crackled like frying beans, and my lower body, which had always felt slightly unstable, suddenly became heavy as a mountain. If standing practice before was like flailing around in water, now my feet were welded to iron. And my breathing. Oh man, my breathing went through a complete metamorphosis. Every inhale stretched on forever, like I was vacuuming up all the air within half a foot. Every exhale pushed out stale chi from the deepest corners of my lungs. Chi and blood were racing through my meridians at least 30% faster than before. This is what a real internal martial arts foundation feels like. This is the martial path. I opened my eyes in the darkness and blew out a long, arrow-straight stream of white turbid chi. It hung in the air for a solid 3 seconds before dissolving. I clenched both fists and felt the power flowing up from my legs, steady, endless, overwhelming. My confidence had never been higher. Then the moment I'd been waiting for arrived. The character stats floating in my vision reshuffled in golden light. Name: Wang Qing. Lifespan: 1755, 1756. Destiny: Heaven rewards diligence. Martial arts: two principles stance. Learned: 1/1000th. 8 extremes small frame. Learned: 21/1000ths. Basic archery. Learned: 890/1000. 55 became 56. My maximum lifespan went up by another year. One more real, solid, uncheatable year added to my life. Huh. Ha ha. I couldn't help it. Standing there in the dark, I started laughing. Quiet at first, then louder and freer. All that suffocating dread from watching old Zhao die today, that crushing despair, this one beautiful number smashed it to pieces. Screw. Only the rich can practice martial arts. Screw your class barriers. Sure, this world has shortcuts. It has pampered geniuses with entire families dumping resources on them. It has poor bastards like old Zhao, driven to the edge and gambling everything on a losing bet. But none of that has anything to do with me. Other people trying to break through? That's defying heaven. That's tightrope walking over a volcano. 9 deaths for every 1 survivor. Me? I just need to squat in this stinking shack every night, cook my stolen bone marrow, hold my stance, throw my punches. Doesn't matter if my form is ugly. Doesn't matter if I have 0 natural talent. The moment that progress bar fills up, cultivation, power, even lifespan, these things that shouldn't be possible for someone like me, they'll drop into my lap like ripe fruit in autumn. Guaranteed. No dice rolls. No prayers. That kind of absolute, unreasonable certainty, that feeling of ripping fate's steering wheel right out of heaven's hands, that is the most addictive drug in this entire world. I slapped my own cheeks, snap, snap, pulled my fists back up, and got back to work. Eyes colder and sharper than the spring night wind. I ran the numbers again. 60 proficiency points per day with my bone marrow cheat meals. To truly enter the skin tempering realm, I need both 8 extremes small frame and 2 principal stance at the minor mastery level. That's roughly 2,000 complete repetitions total. Less than 40 days, I calculated silently, eyes burning. 40 days from now, both techniques hit minor mastery. That's when I truly step into skin tempering, first stage. The blood and flesh workshop is a good place. But I'm not going to spend my life chopping bones. The techniques, the resources, the real world out there. That's what I'm going after. The dull whoosh of fists cutting through foul air started up again in my stinking little shack. Over and over and over. Tireless. Relentless. A machine that doesn't know how to stop. Nobody comes to the blood and flesh workshop at night. And honestly, I get it. First, it's pitch black. Second, the smell. Take rotten meat that's been sitting for a year. Mix it with fresh guts and some mystery fluid that I refuse to identify. Then let the night breeze stir it all together like nature's worst soup. The stench could literally lift the top of your skull off and send it floating away. But for certain residents, that smell is basically a dinner bell. Squeak, squeak. Tiny scratching sounds near the pile of beast carcasses nobody got around to cleaning up. Under the pale moonlight, I could see dark shapes wriggling between the bones. Red-eyed giant rats. The lovely locals from the mass graves outside the city. These things are the size of house cats. They eat nothing but rotten corpses, and their eyes glow crimson red in the dark like tiny evil lanterns. Corner 1. And it'll bite a grown man without hesitation. During the day when the workshop is full of people, they stay hidden. But after midnight, this place becomes their personal all-you-can-eat buffet. One particularly fat one was sprawled on an iron-horned bull leg bone, gnawing on leftover tendons, absolutely living its best life. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Not a care in the world. It had absolutely no idea that 30 steps away, in a shack so foul that even ghosts refused to visit, a pair of eyes colder and darker than its own were. Locked onto it like a targeting system. That would be me. Shirtless, bronze muscles carved out like blocks of hammered iron in the darkness, holding a brand new 100-forged steel-heavy bow. I picked this beauty up 2 days ago during our first half-day off. Changed into some ratty civilian clothes, snuck out to the black market in the outer city, and dropped 20 silver taels on it. As for my old mulberry wood bough from Green Bull Ridge, I chopped it up and used it as firewood to cook my bone marrow soup. Rest in pieces. These little monsters sure are plump, I thought, my eyes going cold with that focused hunter's stare. See, ever since I claimed the night shift at the butchery, I realized this place is an untapped gold mine. My basic archery has been stuck at 890 out of 1,000 for ages now. The problem? Unlike standing practice or punching, archery is a killing skill. You can't level it up by shooting air. You need living targets. You need blood. And it's not like I can hop over the city wall at midnight and start shooting the night watchman. That's what we call actively shortening your lifespan. I was planning to wait for a day off and sneak outside the city to hunt something. But then these free-range living targets just walked right through my front door on their own little legs. These aren't rats. These are walking proficiency points. I took a deep breath. Feet staggered, locked into a solid stance position. Waist and hips engaged. This steel bow needs 300 pounds of arm strength to draw. I pulled it back smooth as taffy, not a single tremor, stretching it into a perfect full moon. Normal archers shooting something this small and fast at this distance would need great eyesight and a healthy dose of luck. I don't need luck. I have hundreds upon hundreds of system-corrected repetitions burned into my muscle memory. It's not skill at this point. It's instinct carved into my bones. Aim. Focus. My breathing stopped. THWIP. The bowstring snapped back with a piercing crack that echoed through the silent shack. The steel-forged heavy arrow ripped through the air with a shriek. That fat rat didn't even have time to squeak. Its entire head just pop, exploded into a cloud of red mist. The arrow kept going, carrying half the rat's body with it, and punched into the thick bull bone behind it. The arrow shaft was still vibrating like a tuning fork. The other rats? Gone, scattered like their souls had been ripped out, dove into the sewer cracks and vanished in a blink. Killed living target. Archery EXP 2, current progress. Learned, 892/1000. I lowered the bow and rubbed my thumb where the string had left it tingling. The numbers ticked up on my display, but I was frowning. Experience went up, but that was way too loud. I stared at the steel bow in my hands, doing some mental math. 300 pounds of draw weight. The power is absolutely devastating. Using this on giant rats is like swinging a sledgehammer at a mosquito. But the problem is that steel bowstring is wound so tight that the moment you release, the air vibration sounds like someone banging a gong in the dead of night. And that arrow whistling through the air might as well be a screaming siren. Lucky for me, this butchery is in the remote south side of town. Jingtu and the old-timers think this place stinks too much to sleep near, so they bed down in the inner-city barracks several streets away. If they'd been in the next courtyard over, that one shot would have woken up the entire building. Nope, this thing is useless for stealth. This is basically a giant neon sign that says, "Hey everyone, I'm right here, please come kill me." I crept outside, yanked the steel arrow out of the bull bone, and glanced at the mangled half-rat still stuck to it. Disgusting. These things eat nothing but rot and corpses. One bite of this meat, and I'd probably be on the toilet for 3 days straight. I kicked the remains into the sewer drain. Evidence. What evidence? Back inside, I drew the bowstring again. No arrow this time. Just an empty pull. Twang, still loud. I didn't get discouraged. Sure, empty draws don't kill anything and won't give me system experience. But I'm not stupid. When I released just now, my fingers were gripping the string too hard. Muscles too tense. That caused extra lateral vibration when the string snapped back. I adjusted my arm muscles, tried a few more empty draws. Twang, a little quieter. But with steel string material, there's no way I'm going to figure out silent shooting just by tinkering on my own. That's like trying to reinvent the wheel in a closet. Forget it. Trial and error in a vacuum is pointless. I set down the bow and stared coldly out the window into the darkness. This skill needs blood to grow. Starting tomorrow night, I wait for more living targets. As long as I kill enough of them in real combat and stack up the proficiency, the system will automatically correct me into the perfect silent release technique. That's the beautiful thing about my cheat. I don't need to be a genius. I don't need a master teacher. I just need to keep doing it. Ugly, clumsy, loud. And the system grinds me into perfection whether I understand the theory or not. Now if these rats could just learn to show up in bigger groups, that'd be great. For the next 2 weeks, my nightlife became incredibly productive. And by nightlife, I don't mean Spring Breeze Alley. I mean something way better. Every evening, same routine like clockwork. Step 1. Cook a pot of bone marrow paste so foul-smelling it could peel paint off walls. Chug it like a champ. Step 2. Ride that wave of rampaging medicinal energy and grind out 2 principal stance and 8 extreme small frame until I hit my 60 proficiency points. Step 3. Wipe the sweat off, collapse, sleep like the dead. Martial arts is about balance. I'm chopping bones all day, squeezing every drop of chi out of my body at night. If I push past that and try to pull all-nighters too, even an iron body will crumble. I am not becoming the next old Zhao. Hard pass on the die horribly in the mud career path. Thank you very much. Then at the hour of the ox, the deep, deep middle of the night when the wild things come out to eat, my alarm clock goes off. And the blood and flesh workshop becomes my personal hunting ground. I'd sit behind my broken window with my steel-heavy bow, patient as an old farmer waiting for fish to bite. The moment something moved near the pile of carcass scraps outside, rat, dog, whatever, I'd calmly put 1 or 2 arrows through it, collect my daily experience, clean up the evidence, and go right back to sleep. Never greedy, never sloppy. Rats that eat rotten meat? Kicked straight into the sewer. Worthless. But stray dogs that wandered in from outside the city walls? Oh, those I kept. My old hunter skills hadn't gone rusty one bit. Skin it, strip the tendons, done in one smooth motion. Next night's bone marrow soup gets a nice protein upgrade. Slow and steady. Day by day, the numbers climbed. 950 out of 1,000. Then 980. And something strange was happening to my shooting form. When I released the bowstring, my fingers weren't just clumsily letting go anymore. There was this sliding feeling. Hard to describe. My entire right arm had started doing this tiny, high-frequency vibration at the exact moment of release, so subtle you couldn't even see it with the naked eye. And this vibration, traveling through my tendons and bones, was somehow canceling out most of the bowstring noise. The system was doing its thing, grinding me toward perfection one kill at a time. Then came the night. Clouds swallowed the moon. Couldn't see your own hand in front of your face. A massive one-eyed wolf, mangy fur, patches of scabby skin, had somehow slipped into the workshop yard. It was crouched under a cutting board, greedily lapping up a puddle of blood left over from the day's work. Inside my shack, I stood behind the window like I was part of the darkness itself. My breathing was so faint it barely existed. Draw. Knock. Full moon. 300 pounds of pull. Felt like a toy in my hands. Current progress. Learned. 999/1000. I didn't look at the arrow. All my focus was on my right arm muscles and that taut steel string. Fingers loosened, just a fraction. This time, no ear-splitting twang. No screaming whistle through the air. Just PFF. One soft, muffled thud. That one-eyed wolf didn't even lift its head. A thick steel arrow was already through its neck, pinning it to the mud. 2 twitches. Then nothing. Everything happened in absolute silence. The instant the wolf died, my mental display erupted in the brightest golden light I'd ever seen. Killed living target. Archery EXP 2 ding. Basic archery has broken through to minor mastery. Current progress. Minor mastery. January 5000. Martial art advanced. Trait unlocked. Basic archery. Minor mastery. Absolute trait unlocked. Soundless. Soundless. I stared at those 2 words glowing in dark gold on my display, and my eyes lit up like lanterns. The system gave me a description, soundless, through precise microcontrol of hand muscles and full-body skeletal alignment. Perfectly absorbs and cancels all bowstring vibration and arrow air resistance noise at the moment of release. This trait scales with archery level and can apply to higher-grade bows and crossbows. This isn't archery. I literally just installed a silencer on my bow. I couldn't help grinning in the dark like a maniac. I grabbed another steel arrow, knocked it, aimed at a rotten wooden post nearby, drew to full moon, and released. Almost zero sound. The only noise was a dull thok when the arrow buried itself in the wood. The terrifying whistle? Gone. The bowstring twang? Gone. Just vanished into thin air. Before this, I was a mobile artillery cannon with a megaphone strapped to it. Massive firepower, but everyone within a mile knew exactly where I was. Now, I'm a ghost. A shadow that melts into the night and reaps lives without a whisper. A silent god of death. Beautiful. This is beautiful. I stroked that cold steel bow like it was my firstborn child. In this dog-eat-dog world, going head-to-head in a fair fight, that's something you do after you have overwhelming, crushing power. Until then, hiding in the dark and making problems disappear without a sound. That is the ultimate survival philosophy for someone at the bottom of the food chain. I tucked the bow back under my bed planks, went outside, and pulled my arrow out of the one-eyed wolf's neck. Wolf meat is the good stuff. Strong muscles, tough tendons. Tomorrow night's bone marrow soup is going to be premium. I dragged the wolf carcass back toward my shack, mentally running through all my progress. Archery, minor mastery. Done. 2 principles stance and 8 extremes small frame, both creeping up on that 1,000-point threshold. 2 more days, give or take. I brushed the mud off the wolf, hauled it inside, and shut my rickety door with a satisfied creak. So what if I'm slaving away in this disgusting butchery every day, chopping bones like a human machine? So what if I smell like death warmed over? As long as those numbers on my display keep climbing, steady, reliable, unstoppable, and my hand keeps filling up with trump cards, one after another. Life is good. Life is real good. For everyone else, life in the blood and flesh workshop is like an old lady's foot wrapping, stinky and endless. But for a guy holding a cheat code progress bar, these have been the most luxurious 40 days of my life. Better than any fancy entertainment district could offer. 40 days of chopping bones, practicing stances, shooting rats, and skinning stray dogs. Rinse and repeat. Boring? Maybe. But boring is beautiful when every cycle pushes your numbers higher. Early summer hit Yunzhou Prefecture, and the heat turned the workshop's stench into something transcendent. The rotting smell fermented in the warm air and evolved into a sour, funky masterpiece that could wake the dead right out of their graves. Bang! At the chopping block, shirtless as usual, I split an iron horn bull thigh bone so hard the wooden board underneath cracked. And in the same motion, cleaver flips, wrist turns, a plum-sized chunk of dark red bone marrow tumbled, accidentally, into the waste bucket below. Smooth. Effortless. Like breathing. 40 days of practice and my, legally steel meat, technique has become pure muscle memory. I just scoop it out later when I take the slop buckets to the backyard. Nobody sees a thing. By now, every old butcher here has gotten completely used to me, the quiet moron who does nothing but work. In squad leader Zheng Tu's eyes, I'm a born-in-bred bottom feeder. All muscle, no brain. Even though I do the heaviest bone-chopping shifts and volunteer for night duty alone, all I ever say is, more work means more rice bowls, heh. Nobody thinks I'll amount to anything. Nobody thinks you can cultivate your way out of this sewer. And that's exactly how I want it. In a place like 8 Extremes sect that eats people alive, being invisible, being a nobody with zero presence, is the safest thing you can be. Late night. Wind died down. Clouds cleared to reveal a pale crescent moon. In my shack, tonight's bone marrow paste had cooked down to ink-black sludge. Extra special batch today. I tossed in 2 fat hind legs from a stray dog I shot last night. Premium fuel. I picked up the pot, blew on it, and shoveled the whole thing down. Chewed through the meat chunks and everything. The heat detonated in my stomach and flooded through every limb. Feet apart, 2 principles stance. Arms out, 8 Extremes small frame. 40 days of grinding plus nightly chi and blood flooding had burned these 2 techniques into my very bones. Every movement flowed like water. Starting form, punch, sink shoulders, drop elbows. No hesitation, no stiffness. Every muscle pull, every breath cycle was as polished as a master who'd been doing internal martial arts for 15 years. Golden light started flickering wildly in my head. Diligently practiced 8 Extremes small frame. EXP 1, current progress. Learned, 998 1,000ths. Diligently practiced 2 principles stance. EXP 1, current progress. Learned, 998/1000. My breathing got heavy. Not from exhaustion, from barely contained excitement. 2 more. 2 more. I could feel my chi and blood raging like a river inside me. That heat I'd been keeping bottled under my skin was boiling over now, slamming against every inch of membrane across my entire body. Again, 999. 1,000. Final form locked in. Last breath shot out like an arrow. Warning. The giant bell in my head got hammered. My display exploded in the most blinding golden light I'd ever seen. Ding. 8 Extremes small frame has broken through to minor mastery. Current progress. Minor mastery. January 5000. Ding. 2 principles stance has broken through to minor mastery. Current progress. Minor mastery. January 5000. And the moment those notifications dropped, my body went through a real transformation. No meridian chaos like cultivation deviation. No life or death crisis. No agonizing pain from forcing a breakthrough. The system's breakthrough was like a ripe fruit naturally shedding its skin in autumn. Smooth, perfect, effortless. Exactly as it should be. A tingling warmth spread across my entire body. That vibration force I'd been accumulating under my skin for 40 days suddenly connected into a complete network, welding my outer skin to my flesh underneath like they'd been fused together. I heard little crack crack sounds coming from my own body, like a layer of dried mud shell breaking apart. I looked down. No dead skin peeling off this time. Those cracking sounds were my pores, every single one of them, slamming shut under the force of rampaging chi and blood. My bronze skin darkened, deepened, lost that oily sheen, and took on something cold and hard, like iron or stone. The texture became incredibly dense and tight, locking all that boiling chi and blood underneath. I pinched my arm. The muscle underneath was hard as iron, but the skin on top was tough as old leather that had been tanned for decades. Ridiculously resilient. This is it. Skin tempering realm. First stage. I yanked my boning knife from my belt without a second thought. Blade down. Slashed my own forearm. Hard. SSSSHH. A scraping sound. 40 days ago, that cut would have sliced to the bone. But now, the sharp blade dragged across my bronze skin and left nothing but a faint white scratch. The scratch faded almost immediately as the skin's own elasticity smoothed it out. Not a single drop of blood. Yes, now that's some quality leather. I clenched my fists so tight my knuckles went white, feeling the terrifying increase in raw power coursing through me. The fire in my eyes was barely containable. You want to know what security feels like? This right here. I thought about old Zhao, spraying blood, dying in agony, getting rolled up in a cheap straw mat and tossed in a mass grave like a dead dog. All those poor bastards at the bottom, gambling their lives on a sliver of impossible luck just to break through. And me? I ate well. I slept well. I followed my progress bar like a worker clocking in and out. And when the timer hit 0, that barrier, the wall that blocks countless commoner martial artists for their entire lives, I just stepped over it. Painlessly, effortlessly, like walking through an open door. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for most. Ding. 8 extremes, small frame advanced to minor mastery. Lifespan 2 years, ding. 2 principles stance advanced to minor mastery. Lifespan 2 years, a stream of pure, life-giving energy poured into the deepest part of my spine. Name, Wang Qing. Lifespan, 1756-1765. Destiny, heaven rewards diligence. Realm, skin tempering. First stage, 56 jumped to 65. 9 extra years of life. Just like that. I stood there staring at that glowing 65 and completely lost control of my breathing. Joy hit me like a tsunami. For years from the 2 techniques reaching minor mastery. And the remaining 5. I suddenly remembered something instructor Zhao Gang had bragged about during morning practice. He'd said that the gap between ordinary people and martial artists is like heaven and earth. Once you survive the foundation-building grind and truly step into skin-tempering realm, your chi and blood transform your body so fundamentally that you gain 5 extra years of life just from the breakthrough itself. Back then, most disciples figured he was just dangling a carrot to make us work harder. Nobody fully believed it. But now, looking at the iron proof on my display, that wasn't motivational nonsense. That was a law of martial cultivation. In the Great Xia dynasty, wars never stop. Life is cheap as grass. Regular folks, farmers, laborers, living past 60 makes you a village elder. And here I am, 17 years old, already sitting on a lifespan pool of 65 years. That means as long as I don't go looking for trouble, I could literally lie in this butchery chopping firewood for the rest of my days and still outlive half the gang bosses and high officials out there. And the scariest part? This is only skin tempering first stage. What happens at mid-stage? Late stage? Full completion? What about the next major realm, tendon transformation? How insane will the lifespan gains be then? Immortality. I just officially turned the first page of the King of Hell's life and death ledger. I grinned so wide my face hurt. Standing in that silent, stinking shack, laughing without making a sound. Laughing until tears almost came. Then I pulled myself together. Fast. I walked to the water barrel in the corner, scooped up a ladle of muddy water, and dumped it over myself without hesitation. Then I grabbed handfuls of ash and dried blood from the floor and smeared them over my newly bronzed skin. The tree that stands tallest gets snapped by the wind first. Until I have absolutely overwhelming power, a bottom-tier laborer who's only been here a month, surviving on 2 bowls of rough grain and watery soup a day, suddenly breaking through to skin tempering? That's not good news. That's a death sentence if anyone finds out. After covering up every sign of change, I pulled on my stinking, sweat-soaked work clothes and sat back on my bed planks. Breakthrough means my appetite and chi consumption are about to skyrocket. Those scraps of bone marrow I've been skimming from the waste buckets? The nightly soup that used to fuel 60 proficiency points a day? Probably won't even be a snack anymore. There's only so much marrow I can steal during waste disposal. If I want to keep up this pace, I need real money. Time to hit the black market for actual martial artist supplements. I reached under my bed and felt the cold steel of my heavy bow. My eyes glinted dark and deep in the night. Time to figure out how to make some coin. Noon at the main dining hall. Dozens of bottom-tier disciples shoveling rice into their faces after a brutal morning of hard labor. Clang. Some big guy slammed his empty bowl on the table and started cursing out the soup cook. Oldly, did you wash 800 dirty rags in this soup? There's not a single drop of oil floating in here. A dog could swim through it and come out cleaner than when it went in. We're doing backbreaking work. How are we supposed to survive on this? The cook had a temper to match, though. He threw his iron ladle down and screamed right back. You want oil? Go yell at Fat Zheng from the butchery. The bones they've been sending us for 2 months are picked clean. Bare white bones. Not a shred of meat. Not a speck of marrow. You want me to squeeze grease out of water? That little argument floated right into squad leader Zheng Tu's ears. Zheng Tu had been daydreaming about winning his money back at the gambling house tonight. But when he heard bare white bones, his chopsticks froze midair. Those beady little eyes, squeezed into slits by walls of fat, slowly drifted through the crowd and landed on me. Sitting there, head down, quietly eating my rice like the good little nobody I am. White bones. No marrow? Oh no. I didn't see this happening from my angle, of course. I was busy being invisible. But I can piece together exactly what went through that greasy hamster brain of his. See, Zheng Tu's been butchering for years. He knows iron-horn bull bones are loaded with marrow. Even after the good meat gets scraped off and sent to restaurants, the cracks and joints are always packed with fatty goodness. There's no way bones arrive at the kitchen as clean white boards, unless someone's been cleaning them first. And that's when the replay started in his head. A month and a half of footage. Me at the chopping block. Every single day. That skinny kid. No, wait, not skinny anymore. Even though I've been smearing dirt and ash all over myself and wearing the rattiest clothes I own, the old fox had already noticed I'd filled out. Noticeably. And my wrist. Every time I swung that 80-pound cleaver, there was always that little flip at the end. Oh no, the intestine juice burst. So dirty. This bone has black spots. Can't use it. He was remembering every excuse I'd ever made. And suddenly a cold wind was running down his spine. Because every time I said one of those things, a beautiful chunk of prime bone marrow, still clinging to bits of meat, got swept into the waste bucket with a rag. Whoops. Into the trash it goes. And then every evening, who volunteered to haul those waste buckets to the backyard sewage pit? Me. Always me. So helpful. So hardworking. The old switcheroo. Building the road in plain sight while sneaking through the tunnel underneath. The greedy gleam in his eyes could have lit a bonfire. He'd finally figured it out. The marrow wasn't gone. I'd been pocketing it under the cover of taking out the trash this entire time. No wonder this kid does the heaviest work every day. No wonder he insists on night shift duty alone. He's been sitting on a gold mine, getting fat in secret. But Zheng Tu is a cunning, suspicious rat. He wanted hard evidence before making his move. That night, instead of rolling dice at his usual gambling den, Zheng Tu snuck back to the blood and flesh workshop. He pressed a filthy rag over his nose and mouth, nearly gagging from the sewage pit stench, and waddled his fat body, quiet as a meat boulder, up to the wall beneath my window. Inside was pitch black, but that nose of his, trained by years of handling raw meat, picked up something buried under the overwhelming stink outside. A faint but unmistakably rich smell of blood and meat being slow-cooked. He pressed his face against a crack in the rotting window frame and peeked inside. He nearly screamed. There I was, center of the room, shirtless, eyes closed, standing in my steak position. And my body? That bony skeleton from day one was long gone. Tight, thick, powerful muscles. Skin glowing with a faint bronze sheen. With every breath, my tendons and bones were making little popping sounds. And there in the corner, my little clay stove with a cracked pot bubbling away, filled with the exact bone marrow and beast blood I'd been sweeping into. The waste buckets all day. This kid is secretly cooking waste scraps into midnight supplements and training. Zheng Tu clutched his pounding chest and tiptoed away like a fat ghost. His mind was in chaos. But rising above everything else, above the shock, above the disbelief, was pure, naked greed. Some country bumpkin, getting buff behind his back, under his watch, eating food that should be going nowhere? You think you can feast alone right under my nose? If I can't squeeze 2 ounces of oil out of you, I'll write my own name backwards. And even if I can't squeeze oil, I've got you by the throat now. You'll be my obedient little grandson from here on out. Next evening. Sunset. The old butchers filed out toward the dining hall like always. I finished wiping down my chopping block, grabbed my 2 waste buckets, dirty water on top, good stuff settled at the bottom, and headed for the backyard. Brother Wong, take a break, a slimy voice behind me, dripping with smugness. I stopped, turned around. Zheng Tu was standing there with his arms crossed, blocking the only path to the backyard. And his positioning? Very deliberate. Exactly 5 steps away, close enough to talk, far enough to run if things went sideways. A coward's precision. My heart did a little thump. So, the fat fox found out about my nightly cooking sessions. But I didn't bow or scrape like the other butchers would. I've always kept a neutral attitude with this guy, not disrespectful, not submissive. If I suddenly turned into a yes man now, that would be the real red flag. I set both buckets down steadily, straightened up, and looked at him with eyes as calm as still water. Squad leader, say what you need to say. This waste stinks worse the longer it sits, and I need to dump it. Stinks? Brother Wong. Zheng Tu let out a cold little laugh and strolled over to my bucket. He tapped it with his toe. Thunk thunk. That what's sitting at the bottom of this bucket, boiled down into paste and swallowed? That's not stinky at all. That's delicious. He looked up at me, those greedy little mung bean eyes practically vibrating with triumph. Last night, I left something in the yard and came back to look for it. And wouldn't you know, I accidentally ended up standing outside your window for a little while. Zheng Tu dropped his voice low, oozing that slimy, threatening tone like a back alley loan shark. Wang Qing, you've got some nerve. Using your bone-chopping job as cover, sweeping the best marrow and beast blood into the waste buckets, then sneaking back at night to brew yourself a private supplement stew. That body of yours has been eating real well this past month, hasn't it? My pupils contracted just a fraction. So, he really did come back and spy on me last night. Didn't expect this old gambling addict to pull a surprise inspection, but I kept my face completely still. The only thing that changed was my eyes. They went cold. Real cold. Like a wolf whose territory just got stepped on. Squad leader must be mistaken. I was brewing herbs. For dampness, don't you dare play dumb with me. Zheng Tu's fat face turned purple. He jabbed his finger right at my nose. You think I've been butchering for years and can't tell the difference? Stealing sect resources to train in secret. If the enforcement hall finds out, they'll cripple your martial arts, break your arms and legs, and toss what's left to the dogs. I went quiet. My face, smeared with black ash, was hidden in the shadow of the sunset. He couldn't read my expression, which was exactly what I wanted, because behind that mask my brain was running calculations at full speed. Option 1. Kill him right now. Problem. People everywhere, inside the yard and out. Can't escape. Even if I did, the enforcement hall would hunt me down within hours. 0 survival rate. Plus, Zheng Tu might be hollowed out by booze and women, but he's still skin-tempering mid-stage. A real fight would make enough noise to bring the whole compound running. So, not today. Since the squad leader came to block my path instead of going straight to the enforcement hall, I assume you have something else in mind. I let out a long breath of the stinking air, relaxed my shoulders just enough, and let my voice carry. That unmistakable note of a man who knows he's been caught and has no choice but to deal. Zheng Tu heard that tone and practically melted with satisfaction. His internal victory dance was almost visible. Doesn't matter how strong this kid is. No connections, no experience, just a dumb country boy. Wave the rulebook in his face, and he folds like wet paper. He immediately switched to his caring big brother act, patting his round belly with fake warmth. Brother Wong, you're a smart man. We're all family here. I always look out for my people. As long as I'm around, this little secret stays between us, but he rubbed his fat fingers together. Mask off. You eat the meat. You gotta let your big brother sip some soup, right? How much? I asked. No games. Straight to it. The disgusting blood marrow paste? A pampered rat like Zheng Tu would never touch that stuff. What he wanted was cold, hard silver. Now that's what I like to hear. He held up 5 stubby fingers and waved them in my face. 50 taels of silver. Consider it a confidentiality fee. And because greed has no brakes, he added, same amount every month on the second. You keep cooking your soup and training your little muscles, and I take on the risk of keeping my mouth shut. Win-win, Brother Wong. Win-win, 50 taels a month. He knew I couldn't afford that. My monthly pay at the butchery is only 20 taels. The whole point was to make me fall to my knees, beg and cry, haggle desperately, and then he'd graciously lower the price a tiny bit. From that day forward, I'd be his obedient little dog. But I had zero interest in playing his game. I've never had the habit of being someone's puppet. Not in this life, and not in my last one. I dropped my head, clenched my jaw, both fists balled up tight, veins bulging on the backs of my hands. To anyone watching, I looked like a man going through an agonizing internal struggle. I held that pose for a solid few minutes. Then I let out a long, defeated sigh, like all the air had been squeezed out of me. Squad leader. I'm just a hunter from the countryside. I really don't have that kind of money. This 50 taels. It's everything my parents left me before they died. It was supposed to be for finding a wife someday. I shuffled back into my shack, making a big show of how much this hurt, and fished out a small gray cloth bundle. Unwrapped it layer by layer. Inside sat a single 50-tael silver ingot, gleaming quietly. The second Zheng Tu's eyes hit that silver. They lit up like a starving wolf spotting a baby deer. He snatched the ingot out of my hands, bounced it in his palm, bit it with his teeth to check if it was real, and when he confirmed it was pure, his entire fat face started jiggling with joy. Good boy. I knew you had something stashed away. He stuffed the ingot into his robe, slapped my shoulder with the flat of his knife like we were old pals, and laughed his greasy laugh. Spending money to avoid disaster. That's how smart people live. Keep up the good work, Brother Wong. I'll come visit again on the 2nd of next month. And off he went, humming some filthy drinking song, waddling out of the yard with his duck-footed swagger. Surprise bonus payday. Didn't expect the dumb kid to actually have 50 taels. Tonight at the Lucky Joy gambling house, he was going to win back everything he'd lost this week. I stood there, watched that fat silhouette disappear through the gate. No rage, no weakness, nothing. The heartbroken expression I'd been wearing, it vanished the instant he turned around, replaced by something as cold and deep as a frozen well. I bent down, picked up my 2 sour-smelling waste buckets, and walked back to my shack. One step at a time, closed the door, slid the bolt. 50 taels of silver? I couldn't care less. The savings from Green Bull Ridge were always meant to be spent paving my way forward. Giving it to Zheng Tu was nothing but a stalling tactic. Keep the old bastard happy and quiet so he doesn't go running his mouth to the sect. Because here's the thing about dead men. Dead men don't spend money. And when the time comes, I'm getting every last coin back. With interest. I walked to my bed, lifted the ratty straw mat, and pulled my 100-forged steel-heavy bow from the hidden compartment between the planks. Then I took out a steel arrow. I found my sharpening stone, sat down in the corner, dripped a little water on it. SCRRRCH, SCRRRCH, SCRRRCH. The grinding sound echoed through the dim shack in a slow, steady rhythm. I sharpened that arrowhead stroke by stroke, patient and focused, like I was carving a masterpiece. Sparks flickered off the stone now and then, briefly lighting up a face with absolutely no expression on it. The greedy snake tries to swallow the elephant. I murmured the word softly. Then I ran my thumb lightly across the freshly sharpened edge. The blade split my skin instantly. A single bead of dark red blood welled up. Very sharp, combined with my soundless trait from minor mastery archery, putting this through the throat of an alcohol-ruined, women-hollowed, cheetah-pleated skin tempering mid-stage cultivator? That wasn't even a challenge. That was overkill. The 5th, I counted the days. Today's the 2nd. On the 5th, Zheng Tu collects his sect monthly pay, goes to the outer city to gamble and drink and chase women, and stumbles back blind drunk in the middle of the night. 3 days. Squad leader Zheng, you hold on to those 50 taels for now. Buy yourself something nice to eat. I knocked the heavy arrow onto the steel bowstring, drew it into a slow, full moon aimed at the empty darkness, and let the killing intent rise freely in. My eyes. Better to travel on a full stomach. Ever since Zheng Tu pocketed my 50 taels, the man walked around like he'd won the lottery and found a magic lamp on the same day. The morning of the 3rd, after group training ended, and everyone headed toward the blood and flesh workshop. This fat toad was practically floating down the street, hands behind his back, chest puffed out, strutting like a peacock who'd just been promoted to emperor. He even had time to ogle the pretty widow selling flatbread on the corner. The second he stepped through the workshop gate, he plopped himself into his big chair under the eaves like a king on his throne, greasy teapot in hand. Those little mung bean eyes doing a lazy sweep of the yard until they landed right on me, tying my apron, heading to my corner to chop bones. Quiet. Invisible. Just the way I like it. Now, I'll give the fat man credit. Before he had leverage on me, he was actually a tiny bit scared. He'd seen me split a stone-cutting board with one swing. In the street thug world, nothing's more dangerous than a quiet, strong guy with nothing to lose. If he pushed too hard, and I snapped, sure the sect would mince me afterward, but his 200 pounds of lard would already be cooling on the floor. But the moment his fingers closed around that silver ingot, all that caution evaporated like spit on a hot stove, replaced by the beautiful, intoxicating feeling of having someone completely under your thumb. Just a clueless country bumpkin. I could practically hear him thinking as he sipped his tea. Big muscles, small brain. Wave the rulebook and he hands over his life savings. This is what power feels like. Bigly, Erju, did you skip breakfast? Stop dragging your feet, he suddenly bellowed across the yard, then kicked at a stack of baskets filled with 2-day-old rotting guts and bone fragments. Green-headed flies swarmed up in a furious cloud. These have been sitting here so long they're crawling with maggots. Get them to the backyard for composting. Now. Bigly straightened up from the pig he was dehairing, face scrunched in misery. Squad leader, these baskets are rotten intestines mixed with bone scraps. They weigh a ton and they're slippery as hell. 2 people can barely lift one. Maybe we could. Hard? Then get Wang Qing to do it. Zheng Tu's eyelids flipped up like window shades, pointing the work straight at me with the casual tone of a man ordering a mule around. Brother Wang's got the strength. One man can handle all of them. The capable do more work. Right, Brother Wang. Every butcher in the yard stopped what they were doing. All eyes on me. This was obviously punishment duty. Those maggot baskets normally just sit there until the slop cart comes to haul them away. Making someone carry them barehanded? That's not a work assignment. That's humiliation. Bigly opened his mouth to speak up for me, but one murderous glare from Zheng Tu and his neck retracted like a turtle's. Words swallowed. Everyone expected the quiet strong man to finally explode. Instead, I set down my cleaver, wiped the sweat off my face with the rag around my neck, turned around with, and I'm quite proud of this performance, the most submissive, good-natured smile you've ever seen. I even gave a little bow. Squad leader's absolutely right. I've got the strength. I'll go move them right now. Walked right over. Didn't even wrinkle my nose. Grabbed the edges of that maggot-crawling, slime-oozing bamboo basket with both bare hands. HUP, fake grunt. Neck veins popping, on purpose. I hefted the 300-pound basket of rotting horror and trudged toward the backyard with heavy, struggling steps. See that? Zheng Tu jerked his chin at the other butchers and spat on the ground. That's what a good work attitude looks like. Take notes. Big Lee and the others exchanged glances, then went back to work with their heads down. But I caught the look in their eyes, a mixture of pity and contempt. Thought he was a tough guy. Turns out he's a spineless shrimp. Zheng Tu's literally squatting on his neck, and he won't even fart in protest. Meanwhile, the spineless shrimp was walking toward the backyard with 300 pounds of rot in his arms, and the moment his back was to everyone, that obedient smile disappeared like it was never there. Nothing left but the cold silence of a deep, dark pit. Heavy? For a man who'd broken through to skin-tempering first stage, whose skin was tough as tan leather. 300 pounds of rotten meat was about as challenging as carrying a pillow. Those bulging neck veins? Pure theater, forced out on purpose to sell the act. Keep pushing your luck. I dumped the basket into the sewage pit and watched the maggots writhing in the rotten meat. My eyes were colder than that cesspool. I knew exactly what Zheng Tu was doing. This was a classic bully's obedience test. He'd taken the money but still felt uneasy, so he was using the dirtiest, most degrading tasks to probe my limits. Break my spirit. Crush any remaining pride. Turn me into a dog that does nothing but pay tribute. Too bad you won't live long enough to enjoy the bones this dog brings you. I rinsed my hands at the well, walked back to the front yard, picked up my cleaver, and went right back to chopping. Silent, tireless, a machine. Day 4. Zheng Tu's arrogance went completely off the leash. Dinner time. The usual rule. Zheng Tu scoops first as squad leader, always cherry-picking the best fatty meat. But the butchers doing heavy labor could at least scrape together a few greasy chunks in their bowls. Today, after everyone else had served themselves, it was my turn. Zheng Tu walked over and snatched the ladle right out of the server's hand. Brother Wang, you've been running hot these past few days. Eating meat will only make it worse. Might even give you delusions. He looked at me with that sickening half-smile, stirred the pot twice with the ladle, deliberately pushing every visible scrap of meat to the side, then scooped from the very bottom. A big, heaping ladle full of clear water and plain cabbage. Not a single speck of oil. Dumped it right into my bowl. Eat more vegetables. Good for the mind and body. Keeps you calm, right? Cutting someone's food rations among bottom-tier laborers? That's the same as spitting in their face. Big Li was frowning hard. What's gotten into Fat Zheng? Why is he determined to grind this guy into dust? And Wang Qing. He was so tough when he first arrived. What happened to him these past 2 days? I stood there holding my bowl of sad cabbage water. Looked down at it. Looked up at Zheng Tu's smirking face. The air froze. Chewing sounds stopped across the whole table. A couple old butchers quietly tightened their grips on their chopsticks, bracing for me to smash the bowl over Zheng Tu's skull. 5 full seconds passed. Then I grinned. A big, eager-to-please grin. Squad leader's absolutely right. My throat has been feeling dry and scratchy. Some plain cabbage to cool down the heat. That's great. Really great. I didn't even bother finding a seat. Just squatted down right there by the tree roots next to the food bucket and started shoveling rough rice and cabbage into my mouth. Slurping happily. Chomping loudly. Acting like it was the most delicious meal I'd ever had. TCH. What a pushover. Zheng Tu cursed me out in his head, and the last trace of caution left his body completely. He grabbed his own bowl, piled high with fatty pork, strolled over, and squatted down next to me with his fat face inches from mine. Brother Wang, don't take it personally. I'm teaching you how to survive in a sect. Keep your head down. Swallow your pride. Staying alive is the real skill. He dropped his voice lower, practically oozing smugness. That 50 taels you gave me? That's your blessing. Tomorrow's the 5th, payday. I'm taking your silver to the outer city's Joy Fortune district for a night out. He picked his teeth, eyes going dreamy. You've spent your whole life in the mountains, so you wouldn't know what the girls at Spring Breeze Alley are like. Oh, those curves, those sounds they make. Enough to melt a man's bones to pudding. Your 50 taels? That'll get me 3 whole days and nights with the #1 girl there. I swallowed a mouthful of rough rice, looked up at him, and let my eyes fill with the perfect amount of wide-eyed, never left the village wonder and envy. Squad leader, is the Joy Fortune district in the outer city really that fun? Is it fun? His vanity practically detonated. The floodgates opened. From our inner city gate, go down 2 main streets, and there's a lane called Willow Bark Alley. Dark alley, no lanterns. Walk straight through it, and you're right at the Joy Fortune district. Inside, dice rattling, perfume everywhere. It's a gold-melting pit and a man's paradise all in one. He slapped my shoulder like he was bestowing a royal favor on a beggar. You keep your head down, pay your monthly dues on time. Come New Year's, if I'm in a good mood, I'll take you to a cheap place at the mouth of Willow Bark Alley and let you taste a little something for yourself. H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A. He stood up laughing, dropped his bowl, and sauntered away. I stayed squatting by the tree roots, slowly chewing the last piece of cabbage stem, letting the rough, bitter fibers scrape down my throat. Willow Bark Alley. I chewed those 3 words in my mind, 3 times over. I'd never been to the outer city, but before joining 8 Extremes sect, I'd wandered every street and alley in Yunzhou Prefecture. I knew exactly what Willow Bark Alley was, an old, narrow drainage alley squeezed between 2 main streets, permanently flooded, towering walls on both sides. Long, tight, dark. Even stray dogs don't bother going through it. But because it's a shortcut straight to the outer city's entertainment district, every gambler in the inner city cuts through it on their way to blow their pay. The perfect place for an ambush. The squad leader really is a generous man. I tipped my bowl up and scraped the last few grains of rice into my mouth with my chopsticks. Even picked out his own burial ground with such excellent feng shui. I stood up. High noon. Blazing sun overhead. But if anyone had been standing at just the right angle, they would have seen that behind the shadow falling across this ragged bottom-tier disciple's face, the light in his eyes was colder than a butcher's blade in the dead of winter. The night of the 4th. Suffocating heat. Not a single star visible through the thick lead-gray clouds smothering the sky. Zero wind. The air felt like it had been poured in concrete. Wet, heavy, and pressing down on everything. Inside my shack, I didn't light the stove tonight. No bone marrow soup. No training. Tomorrow I'm killing Zheng Tu, and my mind needed to be perfectly still. Murdering a fellow sect member isn't something you wing. Every detail has to be airtight. One loose thread, and I'm the one getting dumped in a ditch with no grave. So I shut down 8 Extreme's small frame and 2 Principal's stance for the night. Missing 2 sessions won't matter in the long run. Before the big job tomorrow, I need every ounce of my being dialed down to absolute zero. Like a viper coiled under dead leaves, fangs retracted, body heat suppressed, completely invisible until the strike. I sat cross-legged on the hard bed planks in total darkness. Across my knees lay my 100-forged steel heavy bow. To my right, 5 steel heavy arrows lined up in a neat row. Every single one sharpened to a razor edge that could split a hair. I didn't need a lamp. My hands moved over the bow like a blind man reading his favorite book, tracing every curve of the limbs, every strand of the bowstring, every feather on the arrows. Eyes closed, I could map every groove in the steel string, feel the exact arc of each arrowhead in my mind. That's the terrifying instinct that comes with basic archery at minor mastery. I let out one long, slow breath. So long and so focused that when it hit the crumbling mud wall across from me, it made a soft, rustling sound against the dirt. And as that breath left my body, the restless heartbeat I'd been suppressing for 2 days started slowing down. Thump, thump, thump. Slower, slower. Blood flow easing. My iron-tight bronze skin dimmed in the darkness until I was just another shadow in the room. If a martial arts master had been standing in this shack right now, they wouldn't sense a living person here at all, not without opening their eyes to look. Total concealment. Pure killing intent, compressed to a single invisible point. 3 days of insults. 3 days of being made to carry maggot-filled baskets, eat plain cabbage water, and smile like a grateful dog while a fat parasite rode my neck. I didn't store any of that as humiliation. I stored it as kindling. Dry wood stacked neat and high, waiting for one spark. In this man-eating world, anger is the most useless thing you can carry. Anger makes your hands shake. Anger kills your judgment. A real killer's heart has to be colder than his blade. I opened my eyes in the darkness, picked up one steel arrow, ran my thumb lightly across the edge. Drip. A bead of red blood fell from my fingertip onto the bed plank. Tomorrow's the 5th. I looked out the window at the ink-black sky, felt the heavy, suffocating pressure of the coming storm, and for the first time in days, my mouth wasn't shaped into that stupid fake smile. I hid the bow and arrows back in the bed plank compartment, lay down fully dressed, and closed my eyes. I fell asleep instantly, deeper and sweeter than any night in the past 40-something days. The 5th dawned like the inside of a giant steamer basket. Muggy, airless. You could practically wring water out of the atmosphere. But the miserable weather couldn't put a dent in the excitement buzzing through 8 Extreme's sect. Payday. The moment morning training ended, those bottom-tier disciples, who'd been flogged through drills like half-dead dogs, suddenly came alive. Like someone had injected pure caffeine into their veins. They didn't even wipe off their sweat before stampeding toward the payroll office. The guys at the front of the line? They'd skipped breakfast entirely. Gave up their morning bread rolls just to secure a good spot in the queue. Priorities. Blood and flesh workshop work is filthy, stinking, back-breaking labor. So the sect actually pays pretty well. 20 taels of silver per month for a regular butcher, as long as you survive the full 30 days. 20 taels is serious money. In wartime Yunzhou, that's enough to buy half a small courtyard in the slums outside the city walls. Or a solid month at the cheapest brothel in the entertainment district. Either way, life-changing cash for guys like us. Next, Bigley, 20 taels. Thumbprint here. The payroll clerk in his little skull cap flicked his abacus without looking up and pushed 2 10-tael silver ingots across the counter. Bigley frantically scrubbed his hands on his blackened apron, terrified of getting those pristine silver bars dirty, then gingerly cradled them like newborn babies. He bit down on one hard, saw the clear teeth marks. His meaty face split into the dumbest, happiest grin, like a farmer watching his biggest harvest come in. Everyone wrapped their silver tight in rags, stuffed the bundles against their bare chests inside their clothes, and jogged to the workshop. Couldn't risk those babies going anywhere. The whole atmosphere at the butchery was different today. Less cursing, less complaining. Just the steady rhythm of cleavers hitting bone and a constant stream of crude jokes. Everyone was mentally spending their money already, and somehow that made the 100-pound blades feel lighter. Me? I was the odd one out. As always, shoved into the most remote corner. Mountain of iron-horn bull thigh bones in front of me. I didn't join a single dirty joke. Just swung my 80-pound cleaver like a machine. Dull. Precise. Mechanical. Bang. Bang. Bone chips flying. Hours grinding past. The stuffy afternoon finally dragged itself to an end. The western sky was piling up with dark clouds thick as lead bricks, pressing down like the whole world was holding its breath. When the dinner gong rang, the butchers threw down their tools and scrambled to the well to wash off the blood, then rushed to the dining hall for a proper meal before heading out to enjoy their evening. The sect didn't have any curfew rules. Nights were free time. Zheng Tu, of course, didn't need to squeeze in with the commoners. As squad leader, his monthly pay was 40 taels. Plus all the skim and kickbacks he'd been pocketing for years. The old crook's wallet was fatter than anyone's. Today, the second the quitting gong sounded, he didn't even glance at the dining hall. Eat, eat, eat. All you idiots know is fighting over scraps of boiled meat. Pathetic. He stood in the yard, sneered at the butchers jogging toward dinner, and spat on the ground. His appetite was too refined for rough rice and stewed mystery meat today. He was heading straight for the Joy Fortune district, the Welcome Spring restaurant. A whole roasted beggar's chicken, crispy outside, juicy inside. A pot of premium bamboo leaf wine served hot. And that #1 girl, Little Peach Blossom, sitting on his lap, feeding him bite by bite. Just thinking about his big night out made Zheng Tu look like he'd lost 2 pounds of fat from pure excitement. He left the workshop and speed-waddled back to the sect's bottom-tier dormitory, where he had his own tiny single room. Barely big enough to turn around in, but at least it didn't smell like 40 guys' feet. He splashed some water on himself, couldn't really call it a bath, kicked his permanently greasy work clothes under the bed, and dug out his prized possession from the bottom of his trunk, a dark red silk jacket. He squeezed into it like a sausage being stuffed into its casing. He looked exactly like an oversized red tomato that had gained sentience. He even hung a little perfume sachet on his belt. Classy. Without even stopping for water, the fat tomato marched out the door, but instead of heading straight to the outer city, he took a detour, swaggered right back to the blood and flesh workshop. The place was mostly empty by now. Everyone was at dinner. Everyone except me. Thunk, thunk, thunk. I was still in my corner, chopping bones. Had to finish my losses for the day, sweeping that precious marrow into the waste bucket before dark. Still working, Brother Wang. Zheng Tu strolled under the eaves, too precious in his silk outfit to sit in the dirty chair. He held his cheap perfume sachet under his nose and smiled down at me like a landlord inspecting his favorite ox. The sachet's dollar store powder smell mixing with the butchery's pig intestine aroma was enough to make a strong man vomit. But Zheng Tu thought he looked absolutely dashing. Yeah, squad leader. Just finished a bull leg. Wrapping up now, I set down my cleaver, wiped sweat and blood off my face, and answered nice and obedient. Good. Good boy. You've got a future. He grinned his oily grin. Then his hand dipped into the pocket of that red silk jacket. I watched his fingers close around something, probably a piece of silver, but then his face twitched with visible pain, and he let go. Instead, his fingers burrowed into the deepest seam of his clothes and came out with a single copper coin, blackened, caked in old dirt, probably been hiding in that jacket for years. He pinched it between 2 fat fingers and tossed it in the air. But he didn't toss it to me. He flicked it like you'd toss a scrap to a stray dog. Splash. The coin landed right at my feet, in a puddle of bull blood, intestine bits, and black mud. A little dark red fountain sprayed up around it. That's for you. Zheng Tu dusted off his hands and tilted his chin up, savoring the moment like fine wine. Go buy yourself a bun or something. Hold down the night shift alone tonight. Don't slack off. 40+ taels of silver in his pocket. Throws one corroded copper coin into a blood puddle. At my feet. This wasn't stinginess. This was a boot grinding into someone's face. Pure, deliberate humiliation. And one last obedience test from the old fox before he left for his big night. A few butchers who'd finished dinner were passing by the gate. They saw the whole thing. Some stopped walking, eyes filled with pity and anger. One guy quietly clenched his fists. Too far. That fat bastard's gone too far. The air froze. That copper coin sat in the bloody mud, waiting. I didn't move. My 80-pound cleaver was still in my hand. Bone chips stuck to the blade. One flick of my wrist, and I could split that round head open like a watermelon. 3 full heartbeats. Then my face relaxed. No hesitation. No visible struggle. No wounded pride. I bent down, reached my calloused, oil-stained hand right into that disgusting blood puddle. Fingers probing through the rotten muck. Found the coin. I stood up, rubbed the blood off with my thumb, wiped it twice on my filthy shirt until the copper showed through. Then, carefully, reverently, like I was handling a sacred artifact, I tucked it against my chest inside my clothes. Thank you, squad leader. You're too generous. I looked up with the most genuine, grateful, simple-hearted smile I could manufacture. 1 copper is still money. Back on Green Bull Ridge during the worst winter blizzards, 1 copper bought a rough flour bun. 1 bun kept a starving man breathing for 1 more day. 1 copper could save a life. I take money from the living. And I definitely take money from the dead. Seeing me swallow this humiliation like it was candy. Even looking grateful for it. Zheng Tu's last shred of caution disintegrated. He even looked a little bored. Like bullying me had become too easy to be fun anymore. Ha 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 ha. Good. You've got sense. You know the rules. He slapped his belly, looking more satisfied than if he'd eaten a whole roast chicken. I'm heading to the outer city for some fun tonight. Night shift is all yours. If a single stray dog gets in here and eats good meat, I'm coming for your head tomorrow. And off he went, humming his filthy drinking songs. Waddling through the gate in that ridiculous red silk jacket while the old butchers watched with complicated, fearful eyes. I stood by the blood puddle and watched his back until that blob of red silk disappeared around the corner. I touched the cold copper coin through my shirt. Nightfall. The weather finally showed its true face. All that suffocating heat had been building toward one thing, a monstrous summer thunderstorm. It started with deep, rolling booms inside the clouds. Then the wind hit, sudden, vicious, horizontal. Fat raindrops the size of beans came down not like rain, but like someone appending buckets from the sky. They hammered the workshop's broken roof tiles and blood-soaked yard in an endless barrage of explosive cracks. The kind of weather that sends even the meanest street dogs whimpering into the nearest bridge tunnel. All of Yinzhou went dark and dead. The only lights still burning were the red lanterns in the pleasure districts, with faint music leaking out between thunderclaps. Everything else was swallowed by blackness and rain. In my shack, no lamp. I shut the rickety door and stood in the dark. A real hunter doesn't need fancy gear, just the right camouflage. I stripped off my sect-issued work clothes and pulled on a baggy, threadbare dark gray hemp shirt I'd bought from a used clothing stall. In the rain and darkness, this color would turn me into a smudge of fog. Nothing. Nobody. Then I walked to my little clay stove in the corner and grabbed 2 fistfuls of soot and charcoal dust. No mirror needed. I smeared the black ash across my face, neck, and the backs of my hands without any care for aesthetics. The ash killed the bronze glow of my skin and erased my features. In the dark, I was now a shadow with no face. Disguise complete. I went to the bed, lifted the straw mat, carefully brought out my 100-forged steel heavy bow. I found some strips of torn black cloth and wrapped the bow's metal body tight, every inch covered, only the string exposed. No lightning flash would catch a metallic gleam. No accidental bump would produce a telltale clink. Then I wrapped my 5 razor-sharp steel arrows in rough cloth, strapped them diagonally across my back, and cinched the binding tight. At a dead sprint, those arrow feathers wouldn't make a whisper of friction. Everything ready. I rolled my wrists, felt the ocean of skin-tempering chi and blood coiled inside me, dormant, waiting to detonate at a thought. Outside, thunder roared. Rain hammered down like the sky was trying to drown the earth. I pushed the door open and stepped out, one drop of dirty black water dissolving silently into the howling storm. Willowbark Alley hasn't had a single willow tree in years, probably decades. It's a drainage alley squeezed between the inner and outer city, 30-foot brick walls on both sides, passage so narrow that two fat guys walking side by side would get stuck like corks in a bottle. Years of kitchen slop, chamber pots, and sewage have eaten the stone floor into a cratered moonscape. Tonight's monster rainstorm flooded the whole thing ankle-deep. Rotten cabbage leaves, dead rats, and various objects I refused to identify were floating on the surface like the world's worst soup. Smelled worse than the blood and flesh workshop's sewage pit, which I did not think was physically possible. I slipped in without a sound. Halfway down, there's an abandoned night watchman's shelter, a little half-collapsed shack with a low roof. I climbed up in one smooth motion and found exactly what I expected, a rotting platform covered in years of caked mud and bird droppings. Half the roof was still intact enough to block some rain. Did I hesitate? Did I wrinkle my nose? I dropped flat into that filth like a giant gecko hugging a wall, face down in cold mud. Rain hammering through the broken roof onto my back, washing away my body heat drop by drop. This is nothing. Back on Green Bull Ridge, I once spent 2 full days and nights lying motionless in a snowdrift at -10 degrees, waiting for a crafty one-horned boar to let its guard down. That was uncomfortable. This little summer rain on a skin-tempering body can't even make me sneeze. I pressed my cloth-wrapped bow underneath me, using my body as a rain shield for the bowstring. Wet string means weak shots. Can't have that tonight. I pushed my two principals stance breathing to its absolute limit. Heartbeat slowing to almost nothing. Chi and blood settling into dead stillness, like water at the bottom of an abyss. In this darkness, in this rain, you could climb onto this roof, and unless you physically stepped on me, you would never know a living person was lying here. The long wait began. Rain getting heavier. Water rushing through the alley below me like a filthy river. Meanwhile, across town at the Joy Fortune district, the Welcome Spring restaurant was having a very different kind of evening. While the storm tried to rip the world apart outside, inside it was all red candles, cheap perfume, warm air, and the lazy haze of wine and women. On the second floor, in a private room, Zheng Tu was sprawled across a big red satin bed like a beached whale. His precious silk jacket was wrinkled beyond salvation, buttons all undone, exposing that massive white belly in all its globular glory. "Oh, Master Zheng, be gentle, you're going to break my poor little bones." Little Peach Blossom, the establishment's most notorious gold digger, famous for milking every last coin from mid-level suckers, was draped over him, cooing like a professional pigeon. "Ha ha ha, I'm feeling lucky tonight. If I break your bones, I'll have them set with gold." Zheng Tu was spraying alcohol breath everywhere, one greasy hand exploring territory it had rented for the evening, the other ripping a chicken leg apart with his teeth, oil dripping down his chin. And honestly, for this fat parasite, tonight was his best night in 6 months. My 50 taels plus his fresh monthly pay had him feeling rich. But it got better. He'd hit the gambling den before coming here and actually won. For once. Won over 100 taels on top of everything else. Every losing streak from the past month erased. Pockets heavier than they'd been all year. After the gambling high, he'd marched straight to the brothel, ordered his favorite girl, stuffed himself with food and wine, and enjoyed the full-service package. "You were so impressive tonight, Master." Little Peach Blossom dabbed oil off his chin with a handkerchief while her other hand sneaked toward the fat paper bundle of silver in his robe. "It's pouring outside. Why not stay the night? I'll make you bird's nest porridge in the morning." Zheng Tu slapped her hand away, mung-bean eyes narrowing. "Nice try. Sleeping here costs 5 taels overnight. You think my money grows on trees? Won a fortune tonight. Still too cheap to pay for a sleepover." The man's penny pinching was almost impressive in its consistency. "But Master, you've got all those silver notes right there in your robe. What's 3 or 5 taels? Scram. What do women know about money?" He kicked her off the bed, threw on his belt, tossed a few scraps of silver on the table for the food and services, and headed for the door. "I only sleep well on my own hard-plank bed back at the sect." Credit where it's due. The fat man had some survival instinct. He knew the outer city was full of thieves and cutthroats. Falling asleep here with a fortune in his robe, some friend of peach blossoms might just slit his throat by morning. Only the sect compound was truly safe. He burped, grabbed a ratty oil paper umbrella from the table, and staggered out. "Pa, cheap fat bastard. The richer they get, the stingier. Hope he dies at the gambling table." Peach Blossom spat at the door, counting her pathetic handful of silver with a sour face. Zheng Tu pushed open the front door and caught a face full of sideways rain and howling wind. The cold shocked some sobriety back into his pickled brain. What garbage weather! He wrestled the umbrella open. The wind immediately bent it into a pretzel and clutched his silver against his chest with one hand while stumbling into the pitch-black, rain-hammered night. And of course, to save time, he didn't take the main road. He took the shortcut. His usual shortcut. Willow Bark Alley. Tomorrow morning, I'll swing by the workshop again. See if that big dumb ox has any more juice to squeeze. He sloshed through the sewage water, daydreaming about his next shakedown. He didn't even consider that I might fight back. Why would he? A spineless worm who fishes copper coins out of blood puddles? Just wave the rulebook and I'd hand over my savings on a silver platter. Again and again and again, until I had nothing left. Middle of Willow Bark Alley, on the roof of the watchman's shelter. I had been lying in frozen mud for 4 solid hours. Rain had soaked through my thin shirt ages ago, but my body hadn't shifted by so much as a single finger. A dead rat the size of my fist had washed up against my shoulder. I didn't even glance at it. Then, cutting through the heavy curtain of rain, sloppy splashing footsteps, and the unmistakable sound of a drunk man cursing at the weather. My eyelids, which had been lowered to near-closed slits this entire time, snapped open. In the darkness, my eyes glowed with something that would make a person's skin crawl. The cold, locked-on stare of a lone wolf that has finally spotted its prey. I sat up, slowly, 1 inch at a time, so smooth and so quiet that the rotten boards underneath me didn't make a single creak. I unwrapped the black cloth from my bow, left hand steady on the grip. Right hand reached back and drew one razor-sharp steel arrow, silent as a whisper, and knocked it onto the string. Deep breath. 300 pounds of draw weight. Pulled back slow, smooth, steady. Full moon. And there he was. At the far end of the alley, Zheng Tu's fat silhouette came wobbling into view, holding a busted umbrella, soaked head to toe, looking exactly like an oversized red toad that had been rolling in a mud pit. Not a care in the world. Not a single defensive thought in that pickled brain of his. 50 yards. 30 yards. When he reached the spot directly below my shelter, less than 10 steps away, something happened. He stopped. Give the man credit. He might be a hollowed-out, drunk, gambling-addicted parasite, but underneath all that fat and decay, he was still a skin-tempering mid-stage martial artist. Years of street brawls had welded certain instincts into his skin that no amount of wine could fully dissolve. And right now, those instincts were screaming. A freezing chill shot up his tailbone like a venomous snake racing for his skull. Half the drunkenness vanished from his face in an instant. Killing intent, his whole body of flab clenched tight. The umbrella flew from his hand into the wind. Clang. The wide-blade short knife he always wore on his belt was already in his fist. He jerked his head up, those mung-bean eyes frantically scanning the darkness and rain, and bellowed with far more bluster than courage. Who's playing games out there? I'm Zheng Tu of the 8 Extremes sect. Which gang are you with? Show yourself. He couldn't see me. The rain and night had turned me into part of the wall, but I could see him. Every wobble, every twitch, every bead of panicked sweat getting washed away by rain. The killing pressure was crushing him. He could feel death standing right in front of him, scythe already touching his neck, but he couldn't see where. Damn it, a tough one, he gritted his teeth, realizing he'd walked into a robbery. His body lunged sideways, trying to press against the brick wall for cover. His mouth opened wide, ready to scream for help. His feet had barely shifted. The scream was still stuck in his throat. 10 steps away, on the rooftop, my ice-cold eyes locked onto the one thing his panicked upward glance had exposed, his throat. Basic archery, minor mastery. Absolute trait, soundless. The muscles in my right arm vibrated at an impossible frequency, absorbing every ounce of the bow's 300-pound recoil directly into my tendons and bones. Fingers loosened. Just a fraction. Dot. One muffled sound so faint it was swallowed by the rain before it traveled 3 feet. The steel arrow left the string like a bolt of black lightning tearing through the night. No whistle. No scream of split air. It sliced through the heavy curtain of rain in perfect silence, aimed straight at Zheng Tu's throat. By the time the compressed air ahead of the arrowhead created a faint puff of breeze against his skin, the tip was already less than 6 inches from his neck. Zheng Tu's pupils shrank to pinpoints. His arm tried to swing the knife up to block. His ruined body tried its best. Half a beat too slow. Fuck! The sound of steel entering flesh. Zheng Tu felt a coolness on his neck. Then a monstrous force slammed him backward. His body hit the brick wall with a thud, and he was pinned there. The steel arrow had entered just below his Adam's apple, punched clean through the back of his neck, and buried its head in the mortar between the bricks. GKK, GKKK. His short knife splashed into the ankle-deep water. Both hands flew to his throat, eyes bulging out of his skull. He tried to scream, but his shattered windpipe could only produce wet, gurgling hisses, like a broken bellows leaking blood instead of air. He forced his head up, straining to see where the arrow had come from. A dark shape dropped lightly from the shelter roof, landing in the flooded alley without so much as a splash. It walked toward him, one step at a time, unhurried. A flash of distant lightning lit the scene for half a second, and Zheng Tu saw the baggy gray rags, the face smeared black with soot and rain, twisted into something barely human. But that lean, wire-tight body, those eyes, cold, flat, looking at him the way a butcher looks at a pig that's already hanging from the hook. He knew those eyes. Wang Qing, the doormat, the spineless worm who carried maggot baskets without complaint, who ate cabbage water and said thank you, who fished a single copper coin out of a blood puddle and bowed. The disbelief in Zheng Tu's eyes was absolute. Total. His entire worldview crumbling in the time it took blood to fill his lungs. This stupid OX could shoot a silent arrow that a mid-stage cultivator couldn't even react to? GKKK, SP. Spare. Survival instinct crushed every last scrap of his squad leader dignity. His trembling hands dove into his robe, fumbling desperately for the silver. All of it, the gambling winnings, my 50 taels, everything, trying to buy his miserable life back. But his fingers had barely touched the paper bundle. I didn't give him a show. I reached out, grabbed the shaft of the arrow sticking out the back of his neck, and pulled. Hard. SHHRRK. Dark red blood erupted from the wound as the barbed groove ripped free, mixing into the ankle-deep filth below. Zheng Tu's body convulsed twice. The light in his eyes scattered like blown embers. His fat frame slid down the wall and collapsed into the sewage with a heavy, wet thud. Dead. I looked down at the body, flicked the blood off my arrowhead. Interest rates are brutal, squad leader. I lent you 50 taels to go gambling, and you went and paid me back with your whole life. Too generous, really. I crouched down and started going through his pockets. Old hunter's rule, never let anything go to waste. His robe coughed up a heavy oil paper bundle. I unwrapped it. My original 50 tael silver ingot. 4 10 tael official silver bars. And a fat stack of gambling house notes from the Joy Fortune District. Quick count, at least 160 taels total. Your luck really was good tonight. I tucked the bundle against my chest without a shred of hesitation. Money collected. Now came the most critical part, destroying the evidence. I knew the enforcement hall doesn't care much when bottom-tier nobodies die. But Zheng Tu was a registered squad leader. There'd be some kind of investigation, even if it was just going through the motions. A coroner would look at the body. And here's the problem. Bows and arrows are restricted weapons in Yunzhou Prefecture. Military and licensed hunters only. If someone identified a clean arrow wound through the neck, connecting it to a former hunter from Green Bull Ridge would be child's play. I picked up Zheng Tu's short knife from the water, walked back to the body. No expression. Lined the blade up with the round puncture hole in his throat. Wrist flipped. Chopped down. Hard. Thwack. 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 Professional. Brutal. I hacked the neck wound into an unrecognizable mess of torn flesh, then carved up his face and chest with a dozen more wild slashes for good measure. In seconds, Zheng Tu looked like he'd been jumped by 15 enemies with machetes. No coroner on earth could find an arrow wound in that carnage. I tossed the knife into a mud puddle a few steps away. Then I planted my foot on that round belly and kicked. Splash. The body rolled into the main drainage channel running down the center of the alley. The storm-fed current grabbed it instantly, tumbling it toward the outer city's murky moat. Gone in seconds. This freak summer storm was the most perfect accomplice I could have asked for. Whatever blood spray might have been left on the walls or ground. Half an hour of this downpour, and there wouldn't be a single trace left. The rain would wash the whole crime scene cleaner than a temple floor. I tilted my face up toward the black sky and let the cold rain scrub the blood off my hands. One final check. No loose ends. No evidence. Nothing. I wrapped the arrow back in its cloth strip, and my shadow melted into the depths of Willow Bark Alley like it had never been there at all. Morning of the 6th. The air was fresh and cool after last night's storm, like the sky had taken a bath and was showing off. At the main training ground, hundreds of disciples were lined up punching the air in formation, puddles from the rain still sitting in the stone grooves. 1 hour of practice, then roll call. Zhao Ke, here. Li Dinyo, present. Instructor Zhao Gang worked through the roster with his usual charm, which is to say none. Then he hit blood and flesh workshop. Zheng Tu, silence. Zhao Gang looked up from the list, scanned our sloppy little cluster of butchers. His face darkened. Big Li, where's your fat squad leader? Got his paycheck and forgot what morning training looks like. Big Li squeezed to the front with his best nervous smile. Reporting to Instructor Zhao, squad leader Zheng left after work yesterday in a silk jacket and went straight to the outer city. You know how it is, sir. Payday, and that girl Little Peach Blossom at the Welcome Spring is a real handful. Knowing him, his legs are probably still shaking too much to get out of bed. The whole formation erupted in laughter. These rough men live for crude jokes. Zhao Gang rolled his eyes. He'd seen it all before, and drew an annoyed line through the roster. That dirty old goat. He'll die on some woman's belly one day. When he drags himself back, 20 strikes of the punishment rod, right as everyone was still laughing, a massive growling sound erupted from the back of the formation. So loud that even Zhao Gang at the front turned around. That was me, standing there clutching my stomach, face smeared with black ash, looking as pathetic and brainless as humanly possible. I blinked at Zhao Gang with big dumb eyes. Sir, are we done with roll call yet? I'm about to pass out from hunger. When's breakfast? Zhao Gang stared at me. This giant idiot whose entire existence revolved around his next meal, and couldn't even summon the energy to yell. Eat, eat, eat. That's all you think about. Get out of here. Yes, sir. I flashed my biggest dumb grin and sprinted toward the dining hall like my life depended on getting there before the bread rolls ran out. Nobody, not a single person in that formation, would ever connect the dim-witted, stomach-growling, food-obsessed country bumpkin with the cold-blooded shadow that had killed a man in Silent Rain last night. Alibi? No. Something better. The perfect disguise is not being someone nobody suspects. It's being someone nobody even thinks about. Days passed. The butchery kept grinding. The stench didn't get any better just because it was one fat man lighter. Day 7. No Zheng Tu. Everyone figured the coward was hiding in the outer city, too scared to come back and face his 20 punishment strikes. Day 8. Still missing. Big Li and the old-timers started whispering. Maybe the fat gambler lost big and ran off with whatever cash he had left. Me? Same corner. Same routine. Bang, bang, bang. 80-pound cleaver going up and down like a metronome. Sneaking marrow into the waste bucket when nobody's looking. Face blank. Soul empty. A machine made of meat. Day 9, afternoon. 2 guys walked through the gate who did not belong in a butchery. Black combat uniforms. Iron badges of the 8 Extremes Sect Enforcement Hall hanging from their belts. They were pinching their noses and scowling like they'd been ordered to wade through a sewer. Which, fair, they basically had. Every butcher froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Tools stopped moving. Enforcement Hall showing up in person? For bottom-tier laborers, that's like Death himself walking through your front door in a bad mood. Which one of you is Big Li? The dark-faced one stepped over a blood puddle like it personally offended him. That would be me, sir. Big Li wiped his hands on his apron so fast he almost started a fire and stumbled forward, shaking like a leaf. Your squad leader Zheng Tu. He hasn't shown up since payday on the 5th, correct? Why, yes, sir. We thought he was just slacking off in the outer city. The dark-faced disciple let out a cold laugh and snapped his case file shut. Don't bother waiting. He's not coming back. Yesterday evening, the city defense garrison fished a chunk of bloated meat out of the moat gate. He paused, looking slightly nauseous himself. 3 days in the water, swollen up like a balloon, hacked up with at least 20-something cuts, face chopped into mincemeat, intestines floating around him like streamers. If his squad leader's badge hadn't been jammed in his belt buckle, they would have burned him as an unidentified corpse. The entire workshop sucked in air at the same time. Sounded like a giant accordion wheezing. Big Lee's jaw dropped open and stayed that way. In my corner, my cleaver paused for half a second. Then bang, right back down on the next bone. Didn't even look up. "Yes, sir," was he. Did someone with a grudge. Big Lee swallowed hard. This is what happens when you flash your money like an idiot. The second investigator, a pale-faced one who'd been quiet until now, cut in with a sneer. "We checked the outer city. This fat pig was a notorious gambler with debts everywhere. On the night of the 5th, he hit a lucky streak at the underground gambling den, won over 100 taels. Then he went to the brothel and had his fun. And then, middle of the night, pouring rain, carrying a fortune, he walks out of the pleasure house alone with a crappy umbrella." The pale-faced disciple spoke with the tone of someone explaining why water is wet. "In a storm like that, in the outer city where every alley has someone who'd kill you for 10 copper coins, even the dogs know to hide. And this drunk fat sheep just waddled right into it. What did he think was going to happen?" The dark-faced one nodded, delivering the final verdict. "All money stripped clean. The cuts are messy, different depths, no skill. Classic outer city street thugs mobbing a target for quick cash. Body dumped in the drainage channel in Willow Bark Alley, washed into the moat by the storm." The enforcement hall's conclusion was airtight. Practically wrapped in a bow. A gambling addict who'd just won big. Walking alone through the worst part of town. In a storm. At night. Hacked to death. Robbed blind. In wartime Yinzhou, cases like this happen 8 to 10 times a day. Nobody bats an eye. The dark-faced disciple waved his hand impatiently, clearly eager to escape the smell. "Case closed on our end. You lot manage yourselves for a few days. Don't let the restaurant orders fall behind. A new squad leader will be assigned shortly. We're done here." And they left, pinching their noses, practically running. The moment they were out of sight, the blood and flesh workshop went from dead silence to absolute chaos. Like someone threw a lit match into a barrel of fireworks. Hallelujah. Heaven has eyes. That fat leech was skimming our shares for years. And now he's the one turned into ground meat. Serves him right. I always said he'd die at the gambling table, walking through a dark alley with 100 taels. What did he think those outer city cutthroats are? Vegetarians. Evil people get what evil people deserve. When the king of hell says you die at midnight, nobody keeps you alive till dawn. Big Lee and the old butchers clustered together, openly celebrating with zero shame. Someone even proposed pooling money for 2 jugs of wine tonight to commemorate the removal of a great evil from the workshop. In my corner, I listened to the cheering and laughter while quietly sweeping the last bit of marrow into my waste bucket. I set down my 80-pound cleaver and slowly wiped the grease off my hands with a rag. On my ash-smeared, dull-looking face, a rare, genuine smile appeared. Relaxed. Content. The enforcement hall's ruling matched my prediction down to the last detail. Those crude, messy, amateurish knife wounds I'd carved all over his body, that was the whole point. A real martial arts killer strikes once, clean, precise, lethal. Who goes berserk and hacks a corpse 20 times like a lunatic? Street thugs do. Angry, desperate, low-level muggers who mob a target for pocket change. That's exactly the story those wounds told. Combine that with the perfect storm that washed away every footprint and bloodstain, and the case's direction was locked in from the start. Never had a chance of pointing anywhere near me. Over the next few days, everything played out like a script I'd already read. A registered squad leader dying in the streets? 8 Extreme sect couldn't just ignore it, they'd lose face. So the enforcement hall tore through the Joy Fortune district, rounded up every petty thief and street rat in the area, strung them up in the interrogation chamber, and went to work with whips and branding irons. But no matter how hard they squeezed, nobody could confess to something they didn't do. The storm had erased every clue. The knife wounds were untraceable chaos. A textbook hit-and-run robbery with 0 witnesses and 0 evidence. After a few days of squeezing dry sponges, the enforcement hall gave up, stamped the file, filed it under unsolved, and moved on. Going to actual war with the outer city gangs over one gambling-addicted, brothel-visiting deadbeat who got himself killed outside a red light district? That would be beneath the sect's dignity. Unsolved cases are wonderful things. Unsolved cases let a man sleep well. I tossed the rag aside and looked up at the early summer sky. Bright, blue, clear. The dark cloud named Zhengtu that had been hanging over my head was finally gone. And the best part? That generous old squad leader had left me a farewell gift, a fat stack of silver that could change everything. I touched the bundle of notes hidden against my chest through my shirt. 160 taels from him, plus my original savings. Close to 300 taels of cold, hard cash in my pocket. The bone marrow sludge works, but the conversion rate is terrible. Eat too much of it, and my stomach starts doing backflips. I took a deep breath of the blood and flesh workshop's fragrant air, and for the first time, that iron and rot smell actually tasted sweet. Time to find a day off, hit the black market, and buy some real martial artist supplements. With proper medicine backing me up, this progress bar isn't just going to climb anymore. It's going to fly. Time is the cheapest thing in the world when you're at the bottom. Zheng Tu's death was like tossing a rock into the workshop's stinking water barrel. A few ripples, then back to dead calm. Nobody missed him. Nobody mourned him. The flies didn't even notice he was gone. The inner hall sent a replacement within 2 days. New squad leader, surnamed Sun, a scrawny old man so timid he flinched at his own shadow. Probably figured the last guy who sat in that big chair got chopped into hamburger meat, so the position had bad feng shui. Old Sun spent his days hiding in his room, only poking his head out for roll call. Perfect. I was more than happy with this arrangement. Back to being the invisible bone-chopping machine in the corner. No fat parasites breathing down my neck. No copper coins being thrown into blood puddles. Just peace, quiet, and steady progress. Half a month slid by. Then finally, the 1 day off per month that bottom-tier disciples get. I was out of bed before dawn. No training today. Today I had important business. Shopping. Walking around with nearly 300 taels of silver in my pocket while still drinking homemade sewer sludge bone soup every night? That's not frugal. That's just stupid. I stripped off my sect work clothes and put on a dark gray robe I'd bought from a second-hand stall. Stuffed some rags and dry grass into the shoulders and waist area. My lean, hard-muscled frame instantly transformed into a slouchy, thick-bodied, unremarkable, rough-looking man. Then I pulled out a small clay jar from under my bed, filled with a dye I'd brewed from walnut shells and wild herbs. Smeared it evenly on my face, neck, and hands. My faintly glowing bronze skin turned into a sickly, sun-damaged dark yellow. The look of a man who'd spent 20 years doing hard labor under scorching skies. Glued on some scraggly fake stubble around my chin. Checked my reflection in the water barrel. Perfect. Even Big Lee, the guy who stands 3 feet away from me every single day, would look at this face and see a down-on-his-luck middle-aged drifter. Not in a million years would he recognize the silent bone chopper who can't string 2 sentences together. Silver notes tucked safely against my skin. Out the gate. Straight to the outer city's underground black market. Yunzhou's black market, nicknamed the Ghost Market, hides underneath a sprawling maze of shantytown slums on the west side of the outer city. This place doesn't ask where you're from or where your goods came from. As long as you've got real money, you can buy anything. Assassination poison? Got it. Some rich lady's stolen red underwear? Aisle 3. Murder weapons, fake identities, forbidden pills, the full menu. I zigzagged through the alleys, paid 10 copper coins to the masked bouncer at the entrance, and slipped into a dim underground street. The black market doesn't do shouting. Both sides of the tunnel were lined with stalls lit by flickering wind lanterns. Buyers and sellers huddled together whispering like conspirators. The air was thick with the smell of moldy herbs and cheap incense. I wrinkled my nose. Compared to the blood and flesh workshop's skull-splitting sewage stench, this place's air quality was practically a mountain spa. Almost disappointingly pleasant. I skipped past the junk stalls selling rusty knives and cracked pottery and walked straight to a shop with a black wooden sign reading, 100 Herbs Hall, one of the few semi-legitimate operations in this underground rat maze. I pushed through the heavy curtain. Behind the counter, a scrawny shopkeeper in a skull cap with a ridiculous handlebar mustache was weighing herbs on a tiny brass scale. He looked up, scanned my shabby outfit with those shrewd little eyes, and instantly switched on his professional fake smile. Well, new face. What can I get you, sir? Top quality wound salves? Antidote pills? We've got everything. Then he leaned forward with a conspiratorial wink, flashing a big gold tooth. And if the gentleman has been feeling a little lacking in the bedroom department lately, we just brewed a fresh batch of Tiger Descending the Mountain wine. Guaranteed to restore your vigor. You'll be a stallion all night long, multiple rounds, no problem. I stared at him with zero expression. Walked up to the counter. Tapped the wood with my knuckle. Shopkeeper, at my age, the only thing I'm interested in toughening up is my skin, not my bedpost. I deliberately roughened my voice into a dry rasp. Stop waving your tourist trap garbage and bedroom snake oil at me. Show me the real stuff. Gold tooth blinked. The clown act dropped immediately. Oh, this one knows what he's talking about. Straight to business. I like it. He set down his scale and lowered his voice. What kind of real stuff are we talking about? I'd done my homework long before coming here. For the past 2 weeks, while everyone thought I was a brainless log just swinging my cleaver, my ears had been sharper than a hunting dog's. All those old butchers talking trash and swapping gossip during work, I caught every word, every name, every market rumor. I'd already mapped out which basic supplements were the hottest sellers on Yunzhou's black market. Something that actually replenishes qi and blood and tempers the body. No filler, no scams. I locked eyes with him and said 3 words. Blood-condensing pills. You got any? The instant blood-condensing pills left my mouth, Gold Tooth's eyes lit up like lanterns. But the old fox still put on his show, straightened up, stroked his mustache, played hard to get. Oh, sir, blood-condensing pills are graded medicinal pills. The main ingredient is 100-year red ginseng, refined with the heart blood of high-tier ferocious beasts. Very rare. Very precious. Usually gets consumed internally by the big sects and martial arts families before it ever hits the open market. Whatever trickles down to us, well, the price is, shall we say, cut the sales pitch. Give me a real price. Money's not a problem. I waved my hand like a rough and tumble big spender. Rule number 1 of black market shopping. The more you pinch pennies, the more they smell blood. But act like a man who kills people for pocket change and doesn't care about cost. That commands respect. Now that's what I like to hear. Gold Tooth slapped his thigh, spun around, and carefully retrieved a palm-sized white porcelain bottle from the top shelf of his medicine cabinet. 10 pills per bottle. Since you're clearly a straight shooter, flat price, 50 taels of silver. Not 1 copper less. 50 taels a bottle? I kept my face still, but internally my jaw hit the floor. I chopped stinking bones for an entire month and earned 20 taels. Can't even buy half a bottle of pills. No wonder guys like old Zhao got desperate enough to swallow black market poison to force a breakthrough. The entry fee for proper cultivation is high enough to make a man weep. But today I'm a man with deep pockets. I didn't reach for my money. Instead, I picked up the bottle, pulled the wooden cork, and took a sniff. Herbal smell mixed with blood. I poured 1 dark red pill onto my palm and held it under my nose. My eyebrows crunched together. Now, I don't know anything about alchemy or fancy pharmaceutical theory, but back on Green Bull Ridge, I nearly fell off a cliff trying to dig up wild mountain ginseng to sell. I know exactly what properly aged ginseng smells like. Deep, lingering, smooth. The herbal note was sharp and shallow. 5-year farm-grown ginseng root scraps at best. And the blood smell? Oh, that was the real kicker. That earthy, slightly sour blood tang. I'd recognize it in my sleep. I spend every single day up to my elbows in it. That's iron-horn bull blood. The cheapest, most common livestock blood in the entire prefecture. The same stuff I mop off my cutting board 12 hours a day. I dropped the pill back in, corked it shut with a sharp pop, and shoved the bottle back across the counter. Shopkeeper, you see me dressed like a bum and figure I'm an easy mark. Is that it? Arms crossed. Eyes cold as a blade. The blood in this pill has that unmistakable earthy sourness. That's bottom-grade iron-horn bull blood. The ginseng smell hits hard, but fades fast. Cheap 5-year farm-grown root trimmings, tops. I leaned forward with the energy of a man who slit throats for a living. You rolled up some bull blood into mud balls, and you're trying to sell me that for 50 taels? Do I look like an idiot to you? Gold Tooth's fake smile froze on his face like someone had hit the pause button. He sucked in a sharp breath and looked at me. Really looked at me this time. And what I saw in his eyes was genuine fear. Plenty of clueless fools wander through the black market pretending to be experts. But a man who can identify the exact species of animal blood in a pill just by sniffing it, that's someone who's been elbow deep in beast carcasses for years. Probably a veteran bandit who's survived more knife fights than this shopkeeper has had hot meals. Can't cheat this one. Can't afford to anger him either. Oh my. Sir. Please calm down. He snatched the bottle back, dabbed his forehead with a handkerchief, and bowed with his best damage control smile. This old fool has eyes but couldn't see the mountain. I grabbed the wrong bottle. That batch is the cheap stuff we keep for clueless gang thugs. For a distinguished customer like yourself. Only the genuine article. He bent under the counter and fumbled around in a hidden compartment. Out came a black jade bottle sealed with red wax. Please inspect this yourself, sir. Real blood condensing pills. Primary ingredient. 60-year deep mountain red ginseng. Beast blood. Authentic black striped python heart blood. One whiff and you'll know the difference. I took the bottle, peeled the wax, and sniffed. Completely different world. No trace of that familiar iron horn bull sourness. Instead, a rush of pure, concentrated blood essence mixed with a deep, rich herbal fragrance that hit like a freight train. Leagues above the fake garbage from a minute ago. Just the smell made the chi and blood inside my body start stirring restlessly, like a dog that just caught the scent of steak. Now that's more like it. I nodded, satisfied. How much? For the genuine premium grade, sir. I won't insult you with fake numbers. 10 pills per bottle, 40 taels. Consider it the friend-making price. Goldtooth was practically grinding his teeth as he said it. Rock bottom, apparently. 40 taels. I ran the math. One pill of this quality contains more concentrated energy than an entire pot of my homemade bone sludge soup. One pill a day would fuel an explosive amount of training proficiency. Good. Fair price. Give me 3 bottles. TH3. Goldtooth's eyes nearly fell out of his skull. On the black market, broke martial artists buy pills 1 or 2 at a time, counting every copper. He'd never seen someone buy 3 months' supply like they were picking up vegetables. What? Worried I can't pay? No. Sir is most generous. His back teeth were showing from the grin. He dove into his hidden compartment and surfaced with 2 more identical black jade bottles. 120 taels total. I reached into my robe and pulled out the stack of gambling house notes from Zheng Tu's generous donation. Counted out 120. Slapped them on the counter. Black market rules. They follow the money, not the story. As long as the notes cash out at the bank, nobody asks whether you pulled them off a dead man's bloated corpse. Which, in this case, I absolutely did. Pills secured. But I wasn't done shopping. Shopkeeper, besides pills, you carry quality dried beast meat? High-tier stuff. The kind where 1 bite equals 3 bowls of rice. Old saying, food supplements beat medicine every time. Pills are potent, but they're still drugs. Take too many and the toxins build up. You need to pair them with high-grade beast meat to grind your chi and blood into the toughest possible foundation. Of course. Absolutely. Goldtooth was looking at me like I was a walking money tree now. He scrambled to the back and returned with a small wooden crate. Inside, dark red meat blocks, cut into neat squares, dried hard as rocks. Wind-dried unicorn rhino prime cuts. Usually we sell this stuff by the slice. But for my favorite customer, the whole crate, 10 pounds, 30 taels. Package deal, done. Another 30 taels counted out and handed over. I wrapped the crate in cloth and stuffed it under my robe along with the 3 bottles. Grand total, 150 taels. My fortune, cut in half in one shopping trip. Did it sting? Of course it stung. For regular poor folks, that's more money than they'd see in a lifetime. But as I stepped out of 100 Herbs Hall and felt the solid weight of those supplies pressing against my body, pills, premium dried meat, enough resources to fuel months of explosive training. The rush of upgrading from a rusty musket to a cannon completely drowned out the pain. This is what security feels like. With these premium resources backing me up, my progress bar doesn't have to crawl anymore. No more scraping waste buckets. No more choking down sewer sludge soup and praying for 60 measly proficiency points. I pulled my straw hat low, merged into the bustling underground crowd, and couldn't keep the excited grin off my face. Tonight, we make it fly. I slipped back into 8 Extremes sect after dark, scaling the crumbling back wall of the blood and flesh workshop like a stray cat coming home. The moment my feet hit the ground, That familiar wall of fermented sewage stench wrapped around me like a disgusting hug. And you know what? It felt like home. Fancy mansions and golden palaces can't compare to your own stinking little hole. This god-awful smell is my shield, my camouflage, my security blanket. Nobody comes snooping around a place that smells like this. I crept into my shack, bolted the door, wedged a big rock against it for good measure, then scrubbed all the walnut shell dye off my face and hands. Bronze skin back on display, old leather texture gleaming dully in the dark. Then I sat on my bed and rubbed my hands together like a kid on his birthday. Inspection time. I carefully unwrapped the bundle and laid everything out on the bed planks. One small wooden crate of unicorn rhino dried meat. 3 red wax-sealed black jade bottles. All lined up neat and pretty. My heart was actually racing looking at this haul. 150 taels. Back on Green Bull Ridge. That buys half a village's worth of good farmland. You could eat white flour buns and fatty pork every meal until you died of old age. And I just traded it all for this little collection of bottles and jerky. Expensive? Sure. But if it makes the progress bar go brrrr, I'd sell a kidney and call it a bargain. I opened the meat crate first. Dark red blocks, dried until they were practically black. Square cut, uniform, hard as rocks. I picked one up and pressed it with my thumb. This thing could crack a dog's skull open if you threw it right. I bit down on the corner and pulled. Crunch. My jaw ached. My cheek muscles bulged. I had to put my whole face into it just to tear off one tiny strip. The texture was like chewing a 10-year-old leather boot that had been marinated in salt and wild beast musk. Dry, tough, gamey as hell, but I didn't spit it out. My eyes lit up instead. That one tiny shred of meat hit my stomach and immediately generated a deep, heavy wave of heat. One little sliver had more staying power than 2 full bowls of rough rice from the dining hall. That's the good stuff. Chewy and filling. I gnawed through half a block like a man possessed, stopping only when my stomach felt about 70% full. Foundation laid. Fuel loaded. Time for the main course. I picked up a black jade bottle, scraped off the red wax seal, pulled the cork. A deep, rich medicinal fragrance. 60-year mountain ginseng braided with black-striped python heart blood flooded the room instantly. So potent it actually pushed back the sewage stench. That's a first. I tipped one dark red blood condensing pill onto my palm. Smooth, plump, with a faint oily sheen on the surface. For taels of silver. 1 pill. For taels. That's 2 months of comfortable living for a family of 3 out there. I swallowed hard. From the price, not the pill. Then tilted my head back and popped it down. It dissolved the instant it hit my tongue. Nothing like that savage, burning, nausea-inducing chaos of my homemade bone sludge soup. This was a completely different universe. The warmth that flowed down was smooth, like a massive spring river, gentle on entry but enormous in volume. It slid into my stomach and then detonated. My entire body jolted. That impossibly pure medicinal energy split into 1,000 warm streams and drilled into every limb, every meridian, every crack in my bones. My tough leather skin, ground and tempered to the consistency of aged cowhide, actually flushed with a rosy glow. Full. Too full. If the old bone marrow paste was like pumping air into a deflated ball, filling it to maybe 80%, then this blood-condensing pill was like shoving a fire hose into that ball and cranking it to maximum. The sheer volume of pure chi and blood was stretching my tendons and bones to the point of aching. So this is what a real graded pill feels like. This is insane. My eyes snapped open. The excitement in them was barely containable. A normal person taking this pill? They'd be shooting blood from their nose, chi flowing backwards, probably pass out. Maybe die? But I have a cheat code. Get to work. I threw myself off the bed, stomped both feet into the mud floor, and locked into 2 principal stance. Chest tucked, back straight, chi sinking to the dantian. The moment I started the breathing technique, all that rampaging medicinal energy inside me found its outlet. The system grabbed it by the collar and forced it into fuel, grinding my skin membrane, tempering my bones, burning through the cultivation process like jet fuel. Golden light blazed across my mental display like fireworks. Diligently practiced 2 principles stance. Force correction feedback. EXP 1, current progress. Minor mastery, 125 out of 5,000. Before, every single rep left me a tiny bit more tired. I'd have to wait for the system's restorative energy to patch me up before going again. Now, with the blood-condensing pill acting as a nuclear reactor inside me, I couldn't even feel fatigue. The instant the progress bar ticked and burned a sliver of chi, the pill's ocean of energy surged in and slammed my stats right back to maximum. Stance done. Without pausing, I twisted my hips and flowed straight into 8 extremes small frame. Straight punch, elbow strike, mountain-leaning shoulder slam. I was bouncing around my tiny shack like a pinball, every fist landing with an audible thump of compressed air. Skin-tempering first-stage power behind minor mastery technique. If an iron horn bull was standing in front of me right now, I'd punch its brains out through the back of its skull. Diligently practiced 8 extremes small frame. EXP 1, current progress. Minor mastery, 15 5,000ths. More. This is incredible. I was like a madman on a rampage in this stinking little box of a room, throwing a one-man party that nobody else in the world was invited to. No more scraping filthy waste buckets for scraps. No more gagging down rancid purple sludge that tastes like liquefied death. Pure medicinal power. Pure system feedback. Pure, unadulterated getting stronger. So this is what it feels like to be a pay-to-win player? No wonder rich kids like Zhou Tong walk around with their noses in the air. If I'd grown up popping pills like candy since childhood, I'd probably be even more insufferable than him. 10 reps. 20. 30. Time melted away. Normally, around the 60-point mark, my body would hit a wall. Every muscle screaming for rest, forcing me to stop and sleep. I was squatting against the workshop's moldy dirt wall, choking down the half a dry bread roll that Bigley had tossed me. The thing was so rough and stale it nearly got stuck sideways in my throat. But I didn't even bother getting water. My brain was too busy solving a critical engineering problem. How to steal sleep. See, after last night's pill-fueled training marathon, I'd pushed my proficiency way past the old 60-point ceiling. Amazing. Revolutionary. Also, I was running on basically zero sleep and my eyeballs felt like someone had rolled them in sand. I couldn't keep pulling all-nighters. That's how you become the next old Zhao. But there weren't enough hours in the day to train, work, sleep, and eat. Something had to merge. That's when I saw the donkey. There was a live donkey tied to a post across the yard, standing there with its eyes closed, snoozing peacefully. On its feet. Why do humans have to lie down to sleep? I stared at that donkey like it was the wisest philosopher who ever lived. Donkeys sleep standing up. Horses sleep standing up. I'm a skin-tempering realm martial artist with skin like leather and blood like a furnace. Why can't I sleep standing up? If I can't get enough sleep in bed, I'll sleep on my feet. I'm a man of action. Thinking and doing happen at the same speed. I stood up against the wall, feet apart, toes gripping the mud like tree roots. Knees slightly bent, chest tucked, back straight, chi sinking. 2 principles stance. Minor mastery level. Normally, standing practice requires total mental focus. You're supposed to guide your chi, monitor your breathing, stay razor sharp. One lapse in concentration and the whole stance falls apart. But I have a cheat code. I took one deep breath and just turned my brain off. Didn't think about chi. Didn't think about force alignment. Just stood there and let the tsunami of exhaustion crash over me. 3 breaths. My eyelids slammed shut like they were made of lead. Brain hitting the power button. Zzz. The instant my consciousness went fuzzy, my muscles started relaxing on their own. My body tilted left. Knees buckled. I was about to topple over like a felled tree. Flash. Posture deviation detected. Force correction feedback triggered. A warm jolt shot up from my tailbone straight to the back of my skull. Like a strict old teacher hiding inside my body, whacking my lazy knees and sagging hips with a ruler. HSSSS. My muscles snapped tight on pure reflex, yanking my center of gravity back to vertical. My brain was still basically asleep. The system was driving my body on full autopilot. Diligently practiced 2 principles stance, microsleep version. EXP 1. IT works. I screamed internally with pure joy but forced myself to stay in that half-dreaming state. Tilt. Correction. Tilt again. Correction again. Against that dirt wall, I became a human rocking TOY, swaying back and forth in tiny movements, but never falling. The system's auto-correction was my built-in gyroscope. A full half hour of this. When the new squad leader Old Sun shuffled out yawning and called everyone back to work, my eyes snapped open. No brain fog. No hangover headache. That 30 minutes of stance sleeping worked shockingly well. Not fully recharged, but the cotton-stuffed feeling in my skull was mostly gone. Red in my eyes had faded. I'm a damn genius. I squeezed my fist, barely keeping the grin off my face. I'd just merged standing practice time with sleeping time and hidden it inside work breaks. 3 birds, 1 stone. Paid napping. AFK grinding. Getting experience points while literally unconscious. This is the ultimate combo of heaven rewards diligence plus 2 principles stance. From that day on, the Blood and Flesh workshop gained a strange new attraction. The old butchers noticed that the quiet new guy had developed a weird condition, standing comas. Morning training at the main courtyard, everyone else sweating through their forms. Me, back row, arms waving weakly, eyes half shut. If you listen closely, you could actually hear soft snoring. Afternoon at the workshop, after smashing through a few dozen thigh bones, the moment old son went inside for tea, I'd find a wall or a wooden pillar, plant my feet, close my eyes, and enter rocking toy mode. The first time Bigley saw it, he genuinely panicked. Thought some fox spirit from the outer city had sucked my soul out. Brother Wong? Brother Wong. He waved a blood-covered stick in front of my face. Saw my blank, unfocused eyes. My body gently swaying. He went pale. Oh no, the kid's lost it. He's sleeping with his eyes open in broad daylight. But here's the magical part. The second Bigley yelled, "Got a job," or tossed an iron horn bullbone my way, my dead eyes would snap to life. I'd grab the 80-pound cleaver, wham, bone shattered into pieces, knife dropped, back against the pillar, eyes closed again. All in about 4 seconds. After a while, everyone just accepted it. Heavy labor guys all have quirks. As long as the weirdo doesn't slack off on actual work and volunteers to cover every single night shift alone, who cares if he sleeps standing up like a horse? As for timid little squad leader son, he was thrilled with me. This big dumb ox has incredible strength, never complains, and handles night duty without being asked. You couldn't find a better workhorse if you search with a lantern. With the sleep bottleneck solved, I entered what I can only describe as my ultimate farming phase. Calm as still water. Steady as an old dog sunbathing. For safety, I stopped chasing that 100-point all-nighter ceiling. Pulled the pace back a notch. Started actually sleeping 3 proper hours on my bed plank every night. But even at this relaxed pace, the micro-sleep stance trick during work hours was banking me so much bonus time and energy that my waking efficiency was through the roof. Final daily tally for both techniques combined. A rock-solid 80 proficiency points per day. That's 30% faster than my old bone sludge era of 60 points, and infinitely more sustainable. The blood-condensing pill's massive energy got squeezed dry every single day, without a drop of waste or toxic buildup. My body got proper rest. My chi and blood grew denser and heavier with each passing day, like iron being folded over and over and over. No rushing, no gambling, no risk. Just the steady, beautiful sound of a progress bar clicking upward, 1 tick at a time. Time is the cheapest thing in the world when you're at the bottom. But for a guy with a cheat code, time is the most devastating weapon in existence. The Blood and Flesh workshop's stench evolved with the seasons like a fine wine nobody asked for. Summer's face-smacking green flies gave way to autumn's fat grubs crawling lazily on cold rotten meat. The crooked old locust tree in the yard went from green to yellow to bare skeleton branches. For months, gone, just like that, vanished into the rhythm of cleavers hitting bone. Out in the main compound, exciting things were happening. Word was that Zhou Tong, the golden boy, top-tier disciple, had broken through to skin-tempering first stage. The instructors were singing his praises. Some intersect elder even announced he'd take Zhou Tong as a personal disciple once his realm stabilized. Meanwhile, the mid-tier disciples were brawling over territory and outer city rackets, cracking each other's skulls for pocket change. And the Blood and Flesh workshop? Still a stagnant swamp. Occasionally, some poor soul couldn't take the misery anymore and burned through his savings to transfer out. Occasionally, some new unlucky bastard got kicked through the gate with tears running down his face to start the cycle fresh. And me? I was a blood-stained rock cemented into the most remote corner. Unmoved. Unnoticed. Unchanging. Late autumn now. A thin layer of frost on the stone tiles. I was wearing a padded jacket so dirty you couldn't tell what color it used to be, speed trimming a rack of ribs at my station. Brother Wong, take a break. It's getting cold. The meat's frozen stiff. You'll chip the blade. Bigley shuffled over with a cracked bowl of hot water, slurping between words. Bigley was looking good these days, actually. Because I'd been working so fast, the workshop kept finishing ahead of schedule. Old Son, the new squad leader, would reward everyone with the occasional half-day off. Bigley had gone home to visit his family, even got to hold his new grandson. Life was treating him all right. I'm fine. Working keeps me warm. I gave him my standard dumb smile, and my wrist did its little flip. A beautiful chunk of pig heart blood sailed, accidentally, into the waste bucket. Smooth as always. For months of hiding in plain sight, my face looked the same. Same unremarkable farmer's build. Same dirty clothes. Same vacant expression. But if anyone had peeled open that filthy jacket, they would have found something very different underneath. My bronze skin, once the texture of tough, old leather, now had a cold, iron blue sheen lurking just beneath the surface. That's what happens when your skin membrane has been ground to its absolute limit. When your chi and blood are so full they're about to undergo a qualitative transformation. Tonight. It should be tonight. I lowered my eyelids, hiding the razor-sharp anticipation in my eyes. That night. Howling wind. Tiny ice pellets rattling against the wooden door like nature throwing pebbles. Inside my shack, the little clay stove flickered. I took my last half of a blood-condensing pill, mixed it with a chunk of unicorn rhino dried meat and half a pot of thick bone marrow paste, and downed the entire cocktail in one go. 30 pills bought for 120 taels, plus months of daily, legally intercepted, blood and marrow from the cutting board. Today, the tank finally hit empty. Every last drop, spent. Did I feel bad about it? Not for 1 second. Pills exist to be eaten. Turning them into real, permanent strength is their only purpose. The heat detonated inside me. Jacket off. Bare torso in the freezing shack. Fists up. Straight punch. Drop shoulders. Mountain leaning slam. Boom. Boom. The air itself was making small explosion sounds with each strike. Every muscle fiber was firing in perfect coordination. My bones weren't grinding against each other anymore. They meshed like precision gears, smooth beyond belief. 120 days. 80 points per day. Breathing in stench. Rooted in filth. The final repetition of 8 extremes small frame flowed out of me like water off a mountain, and my closing stance locked in place like a monument. Then the golden light came. Not a flicker. Not a flash. An eruption, like the birth of a universe detonating across my retinas. Diligently practiced 8 extremes small frame. EXP 1, current progress. Major mastery, 4999/5000. 5000/5000. Ding, ding. 8 extreme small frame has broken through to major mastery, current progress. Major mastery, 1/10,000. Ding. 2 principles stance has broken through to major mastery, current progress. Major mastery, 1/10,000. 2 crystal clear notification chimes detonated in my skull back to back. With the golden light blazing, a surge of primal energy, bigger, hotter, more overwhelming than anything before, erupted from the core of my spine and flooded through every inch of my body like a dam had shattered. Crack, crack, pop, snap. Sounds like 1,000 beans frying exploded from inside me. My iron blue bronze skin clenched inward with terrifying force, squeezing so tight that the blood vessels underneath turned dark black against the surface. Then the tension released. Like a tide pulling back, my skin went soft again. But if someone had reached out and squeezed, they would have recoiled in horror. This, soft, skin felt like a thick rubber tire wrapped around steel rebar. Looks flexible on the surface. Underneath, hard enough to chip a blade. Smooth. Natural. Zero resistance. Zero pain. Skin tempering realm, MID stage. Achieved. I took a deep breath and slowly opened my eyes. And here it came. The stats I'd been dying to see. Ding. 8 extremes, small frame advanced to major mastery. Lifespan 4 years, ding. 2 principles stance advanced to major mastery. Lifespan 4 years, ding. Host breakthrough to skin tempering midstage. Chi blood body refinement. Lifespan 5 years. Name. Wang Qing. Lifespan. 1865, 1878. Realm. Skin tempering. Mid-stage, destiny. Heaven rewards diligence. 65 became 78. 13 more years. Just like that. Normal martial artists breaking from skin tempering early to mid-stage get about 5 extra years from the chi blood refinement. Standard rate. But me? My 2 foundation techniques, forced to major mastery by the system, didn't just make me stronger. They each kicked in 4 bonus years of lifespan on top of the breakthrough reward. 8 extra years that nobody else gets. That's the tyranny of having a cheat code. Other people train just to fight, just to barely scrape past the breakthrough threshold. When I train, the techniques themselves extend my life. Every form has a price tag that pays me. Those pills were worth every last copper. I rubbed my cheeks, feeling incredible. Even the rotten fermented sewage stink in the room smelled sweet right now. Breakthrough achieved. Time to test the merchandise. No fancy internal energy techniques. No mysterious, hidden force, martial arts. 8 Extreme Sect is pure brute force, close range. In your face, violence beats violence fighting. My eyes landed on a thick iron horn bull thigh bone propped in the corner, being used as a table leg shim. This thing was as thick as a pillar. At the chopping block, it takes both hands swinging an 80-pound cleaver with my full back and waist behind it just to split one in half. I walked over, picked it up with one hand, gripped one end. No stance, no wind-up, no deep breath. I just raised my right arm, made a fist, and smashed it down on the middle of the bone. Casual as swatting a fly. Boom. A deep, gut-shaking air explosion rocked the shack. No blade, no edge, just pure, raw, obscene physical destruction. That iron-hard bull bone hit my knuckles, and, crack, blew apart at the point of contact. Exploded into a spray of white bone powder and jagged fragments. The force didn't stop there. Several sharp bone shards whistled through the air like shotgun pellets and punched into the packed earth wall across the room, burying themselves a full inch deep. Holy! I stared at the bone dust coating my palm and actually scared myself. If this punch landed on a human chest, wouldn't matter if they were wearing leather armor or not. That penetrating force would shatter the ribcage into splinters and drive the broken bones backwards into the heart, turning everything inside the chest cavity into soup. This is what Major Mastery 8 Extremes small frame plus skin tempering mid-stage feels like. I'm basically a human battering ram. With this kind of firepower, surviving on the streets of Yunzhou should be more than enough. I dusted off my hands, swept the bone fragments into the drain, and collapsed into bed. Best sleep I'd had in months. The first 2 days after my breakthrough were delicate. Skin tempering mid-stage came with a massive power spike, and my body control was slightly off. At the chopping block, I had to actively hold back on every swing. One careless chop, and I wouldn't just split the bull bone. I'd crack the solid stone cutting board clean in half. Try explaining that away with, "Oh, I'm just naturally strong." Heh. Early autumn afternoon. The sun still had some bite to it, but a dry breeze was starting to cut through the heat. Wind rippled across the blood puddles in the yard like tiny red oceans. The old butchers had just finished the noon batch of pigs and were sprawled against the shady side of the dirt wall, shirts off, shooting the breeze. "This autumn heat is something else," Bigley said, wiping his chest with a filthy towel. "Burning at noon, goosebumps by evening. Next payday, I'm buying myself a jug of cheap wine. Working knee-deep in blood every day without a drink to chase the dampness out? That's how you end up crippled when you're old." Erju snorted. "Save your breath. Didn't your wife just send word that the family water barrel cracked? Your paycheck's not even going to get warm in your pocket before she takes it." Everyone was laughing at Big Lee's expense when, bang, the workshop's heavy black wooden gate got kicked open from outside. Both doors slammed into the walls with a thunderclap that sent the stray dogs diving into the sewers with their tails between their legs. Every butcher jumped to their feet like they'd been electrocuted. A skinny, tall guy in 8 Extreme Sect combat gear came sprinting through the gate, drenched in sweat, gasping for air. I recognized him, Monkey 3, the errand runner from the main compound. Professional bootlicker. Right now his face was white as chalk. One hand was gripping an unsheathed saber. His chest was heaving like he'd just run from death itself. "Where's the squad leader? Where'd that old man's son crawl off to?" Old son had been hiding in his room fanning himself and drinking tea. The shouting scared him so bad he spilled boiling tea right in his own lap. He came stumbling out shaking like a wet dog. H here. I'm here. Brother Monkey 3, what happened? What disaster? Disaster. The sky's about to get a hole punched through it. Monkey 3 spat. His saliva had blood in it, eyes bulging out of his head. Those dung-eating Blood River Gang bastards from outside the city walls went insane today. At noon, they crossed the line. They smashed 2 of our butcher shops on East Long Street to splinters, then stormed into the fragrant pavilion and hacked 3 of our outer gate brothers. Guts all over the floor, dead silence. Nothing but wine through the bare tree branches. East Long Street. That's one of 8 extreme sects' fattest territories in the inner city. In gang terms, this is called grinding someone's face in the dirt, spitting on their ancestors' graves, declaring open war. What did the sect master say? Old Son looked like he was about to faint. What do you think he said? He flipped the table. Monkey 3 waved his saber and screamed. Orders from the enforcement hall. Sound the whistle. Call everyone. Tonight, 5:15, main courtyard. Every single 8 extremes disciple. Whether you chop firewood, haul manure, or butcher pigs in this cesspool. If you're breathing and not literally a corpse, you grab a weapon and get to East Long Street to hold the line. If we back down tonight, we might as well go BEG for scraps outside the city walls. He didn't wait for a response. Spun around and bolted for the gate. Had to deliver the same message to every other branch. At the doorway, he turned back with murder in his eyes and added one last thing. 5:15. Anyone who doesn't show up gets charged with sect betrayal. Enforcement hall chops your head off. And no exceptions. Monkey 3 vanished. For a long moment, nothing. Then the blood and flesh workshop exploded into panic. This is a full-scale gang war. Big Lee's legs gave out, and he dropped onto the stone floor like a sack of rice. We're butchers. We kill pigs. Who's ever seen a battle with hundreds of people hacking at each other? We'll be chopped up like meat targets. I'm not going. My stomach hurts. Ow wow, I ate something bad this morning. Erju immediately grabbed his belly and started lowering himself to the ground, attempting the classic, fake sick and pray strategy. Big Lee kicked him. Give it up. Didn't you hear what Monkey 3 said? Enforcement hall is personally taking roll at the main courtyard. Even if your intestines fall out, someone's going to carry you there to fill the head count. Skip it. Tomorrow you lose your head. Old Son was clinging to his doorframe, wheezing, face the color of ash. My old bones. My heart condition is acting up again. What do I do? What do I do? The entire workshop became a scene of pure despair. Wailing, moaning. These were bottom-rung laborers who'd never been in anything worse than a bar scuffle. A full-scale gang war with broken arms and slashed bellies. That was a one-way trip through hell's front gate. In my corner, I quietly set down my cleaver and wiped the grease off my hands. My face matched everyone else's mood, just the right amount of scared and confused to blend in perfectly. But my eyes? If you looked closely, still water. Not a single ripple. Gang war over territory. Of course. Only a matter of time. I laughed coldly inside my head. Gangs are gangs. Dress them up in martial arts school robes all you want. Underneath, it's still just thugs fighting over money. I strolled back to my shack, closed the door, walked to the bed, lifted the straw mat. My 100-forged steel-heavy bow and 5 razor-sharp arrows were lying there, cold and patient. I looked at the bow, shook my head, left it. In the dead of night with open sightlines? That bow is a silent angel of death. But in a narrow street brawl with hundreds of bodies crammed together swinging blades? A long weapon like that is useless. Worse than useless. The second I pull out something that eye-catching, every enemy in range locks onto me like I'm a raid boss. Street chaos. The less flashy the weapon, the better. I went out to the equipment rack in the yard corner. Skipped right past the freshly sharpened, gleaming-edged bone cleavers. Instead, I dug around and found an old, slightly worn thick-back chopping blade. Heavy, dull edge. Nothing pretty about it. Perfect. See, in a chaotic melee, a razor-sharp blade is actually a liability. Too sharp and it bites deep into bone, gets stuck. And while you're trying to yank it free, 3 guys are already swinging at your unguarded back. A dull, heavy blade? Pure blunt trauma. Smashes bones on impact. Instant incapacitation. Never gets stuck. Never chips. Weapon selected. Now disguise. It's early autumn. still warm enough that most guys are wearing thin shirts or going shirtless. But if I strip down, anyone with half a brain will spot my skin-tempering mid-stage body instantly. A bottom-tier pig butcher with cultivation that advanced. Impossible to explain. And in the chaos, the Blood River gang might single me out as a priority target. I found the baggiest, dirtiest hemp poncho in my pile, the one I normally use in winter to block blood spray. Then I stuffed wads of rag into the shoulders and sides of my inner shirt, pulled the poncho over the top, checked my reflection in the water barrel. Beautiful. The padding completely buried my steel cable muscle definition. Instead of a compact killing machine, I now looked like a slightly hunched, chunky, slow-moving fat butcher who ate too much and moved too little. Generic. Forgettable. The kind of guy the enemy's eyes would slide right over. I scooped wet ash from under the water barrel, mixed in some leftover pig blood, and smeared it on my face and neck. Skin went from bronze to grimy, dark, repulsive. The kind of face people actively avoid looking at twice. Preparations complete. I sat on my bed, closed my eyes, and let my brain run battle calculations at full speed. The rich kids and leadership will be standing in the back giving orders. The ones who die are the cannon fodder in the front rows. When we get there, no matter how much people push and shove, I stay glued to the last 2 rows. Period. When the fighting starts, don't stand out. Don't chase glory. When people charge forward, I stay put. When people retreat, I drift toward the wall. If someone swings at me, block with the flat of the blade. Dodge what I can. If I absolutely can't dodge, use 8 extreme small frame to shatter their insides with a short hidden strike. No big dramatic moves. Nothing that draws attention. I ran through every possible scenario in my head, perfecting the art of maximum cowardice. But survival wasn't my only objective tonight. I touched my empty money pouch. The blood-condensing pills had cleaned me out. I was broke again. A gang war with hundreds of fighters? Once the chaos hits critical mass, that battlefield becomes 2 things simultaneously: a slaughterhouse and a treasure chest. Blood River gang's bosses and enforcers squeeze protection money from half the outer city. Their pockets are fat. Some of them might even be carrying martial arts manuals or emergency medicine worth a fortune. Troubled times make heroes. Gang wars make money. I opened my eyes. Something cold and predatory flickered in the depths, the look of an old vulture circling above a dying battlefield. Play it right tonight, and one little stroll down East Long Street might just fund my entire next round of cultivation supplies. Outside, Big Lee and the others were practically writing their last wills and saying tearful goodbyes. I picked up my ugly, dull, unremarkable thick-backed blade and stepped out the door with appropriately heavy and reluctant footsteps. Time to go to war. Or more accurately, time to go shopping. 5:15. The main courtyard was packed. 508 Extreme's disciples, normally scattered across every branch and workshop, had been herded together like panicked ducks. The air was thick with sour sweat, rusty iron, and raw fear you could practically chew on. The elite fighters and enforcers looked composed enough, stone faces, sharpened weapons, standing tall. Good for them. But us bottom feeders? Absolute disaster. Big Lee and Erju were pressed against me on both sides, their calves shaking so hard they looked like human vibrating chairs. Erju's face was the color of old tofu. Every 30 seconds he'd crouch down clutching his stomach. Ow wow, I can't hold it. I gotta find a toilet. Wham. Instructor Zhao Gang's boot connected with Erju's backside without a shred of mercy. Hold it in. Even if you fill your pants, you stand straight. Anyone who deserts today answers to sect law. Erju's bowel emergency retreated back up his intestines out of pure terror. Tears were spinning in his eyes. Zhao Gang didn't have time for weaklings. He grabbed a basket of red cloth strips and started shoving them into everyone's hands as he walked through the formation. Listen up. Tie this red strip tight on your left arm. When we get to East Long Street, it'll be dark and chaotic. You look for the arm without a red strip and you chop it. If you cut one of our own, I'll skin you alive. I took my strip and tied a solid knot on my left arm. Glanced over at Big Lee. The man was so nervous he'd strangled his own arm into a purple eggplant. I sighed, loosened it for him, and whispered, "Brotherly, when we get there, don't push forward. We just hang in the back and yell really loud. That counts. Yes, yes, yes. Yelling is fine, Yelling's not shameful. Bigley nodded frantically, wiping cold sweat. A small commotion at the front of the formation. Several well-equipped elite disciples escorted an elder to the head of the column. And there he was, my old friend Zhou Tong. No silk robes today. He was wearing a custom-fitted rhinoceros leather chest plate and carrying a 100-forged steel longsword with a green gemstone embedded in the hilt. In the middle of hundreds of guys in dirty work clothes holding rusty cleavers, he looked like a peacock at a chicken farm. But if you looked closely, the peacock was not doing great. His back was ramrod straight, forced, chin slightly raised, overcompensating. But his handsome face had that sickly paper-white look. His sword hand was trembling from gripping too hard, and his Adam's apple was bobbing up and down like a yo-yo, swallowing frantically. First real gang fight. Not going soft in the knees was apparently the last shred of pride a rich boy could cling to. His gaze swept the back rows and briefly landed on me, fat, dirty, smeared with mud, wearing a shapeless poncho. He wrinkled his nose in disgust and looked away immediately, as if even seeing a bottom-tier insect might contaminate his eyeballs. I caught that look. Not only was I not offended, I shrank my neck down and gave him my best terrified peasant smile. The instant our eyes separated, I was laughing inside. Wearing armor that's shiny, polished until it reflects light. The moment the fight starts, you're going to be the brightest target on the entire street. Buddy, time's up. Move out. A red-faced elder on the main steps roared, and 400 bodies surged through the sect gates like a black river heading for East Long Street. East Long Street, the inner city's most profitable strip. Normally at this hour, lanterns would be going up in the restaurants, and the brothel girls would be leaning over their balconies waving silk handkerchiefs at customers. Prime time. Tonight? Dead. Every shop shuttered. Every door barred. Not even a tea vendor in sight. Autumn wind chasing dead leaves down the empty road. Pure menace in the air. At the south end of the street, another dark mass of bodies. Blood River Gang was already here. These weren't martial arts school students. These were river bandits. Hardened criminals who made their living on the waterways outside the city. They looked it too. Shirtless. Knife scars across their chests like road maps. Tattoos of eagles, tigers, snakes covering every available surface. Their weapons were a horror show of creativity. Butcher knives, iron rulers, spiked maces, and, I kid you not, several guys were holding burlap sacks stuffed with quicite, white powdered lime, ready to blind anyone in throwing range. The air between the two groups was pure gasoline, waiting for a match. 8 extremes lined up at the north end, 30 steps apart, staring each other down. During the march, I'd, accidentally, stepped on Big Lee's heels several times, gradually slowing my pace until I'd perfectly wedged myself into the second-to-last row. Hundreds of human shields in front of me. Wide open escape route behind. Optimal position for both, doing nothing, and watching comfortably. Blood River scum, our red-faced elder charged to the front line, waving a massive demon head broadsword at the enemy formation. You had the guts to cross into our city, smash our shops, and cut our people? Nobody leaves tonight without leaving a few limbs behind. The Blood River crowd parted. Out stepped their leader, a stocky man with a scalp full of ringworm scabs and a knife scar running straight through his left eye. He was dragging a rusty 9-ring broadsword behind him, the rings clanging and scraping against the stones. PTO. He spat a thick glob onto the street and sneered. Don't pull that big city gang attitude on us. Those shops were OURS first. Your sect muscled us out years ago with numbers. Today we're just collecting what's owed. With interest. Save the speeches. Street rules. Whoever's blade is faster owns the street. This was a gang war over territory and money. 0 principles. 0 honor. The negotiation was just a warm-up act before the slaughter. The red-faced elder clearly had no interest in diplomacy either. He raised his broadsword high, veins bulging on his forehead, and let out a scream that could crack stone. 8 extremes brothers. Chop these dogs 2 pieces. Kill. Slaughter them. The fuse hit the powder keg. 8 extremes frontline enforcers and elite disciples launched forward like rabid tigers, howling at full volume. Blood River Gang answered in kind. Ringworm Head swung his 9-ring blade, and hundreds of desperate criminals charged head-on. 2 human waves collided in the middle of the street. No elegant kung fu exchanges. No, After you, sir, martial courtesy. Just the most primitive, savage meat grinder imaginable. Clang, clang, clang. Steel on steel. Blades hitting bone. The entire street erupted into a wall of noise and violence. In the first 3 seconds of contact, at least a dozen people on both sides went down screaming into pools of blood. Then Blood River Gang played dirty, because of course they did. A dozen thugs in their back rows reared back and hurled their burlap sacks. Whoosh! A white sandstorm of powdered quicklime billowed across the front lines like a blizzard from hell. My eyes, those bastards. I can't see. A dozen of 8 Extreme's best fighters, blinded instantly. Didn't matter how good their martial arts were. Eyes full of burning lime turns anyone into a helpless target. Blood River thugs swarmed the blinded fighters, iron clubs and cleavers raining down. Blood everywhere. Zhou Tong was near the front. His rhinoceros armor tanked one heavy club strike, but the impact turned his face green. His fancy longsword. Forget precision swordsmanship. He was just swinging it wildly with his eyes squeezed shut, shrieking like a terrified child. Meanwhile, WAY in the back, my own, battle, had arrived. The lime attack had scrambled 8 Extremes formation, and a few fast Blood River fighters slipped around the edges and reached the rear rows. One of them, a skinny, shirtless thug with a heavy iron ruler, spotted me immediately. The fat, clumsy-looking idiot in the baggy poncho. Easy pickings. This guy had real skin-tempering first-stage cultivation. In his eyes, the dull knife-holding butterball in the back row was a free kill. One swing, brains on the pavement. Die, fatso. Lie down for grandpa, he screamed, charging with full momentum. The iron ruler whistled through the air, aimed straight at the top of my skull. Next to me, Erju dropped to the ground instantly, hands over his head, eyes shut, waiting to die. I stood perfectly still, watching the iron ruler descend toward my face. My eyes were calm as a windless lake. Too slow. From the perspective of a skin-tempering mid-stage cultivator with major mastery, 8 Extreme small frame, this man was moving in slow motion. I could count at least 7 openings on his body, any one of them enough for me to punch his heart out through his spine, 3 times over. But I couldn't use that kind of move. Caving in someone's chest like a cannonball would attract every eye on the street. The iron ruler was a hair's width from my skull when I moved. One tiny slide of my foot, body tilted just a fraction. The killing blow missed my nose by less than an inch and slammed into empty air. In the same motion, I used his own forward momentum against him. The iron butt cap at the base of my thick cleaver's handle came up, fast, precise, cold, and drove straight into his solar plexus. Thump. One clean 8 Extremes collapsing strike channeled through the handle into his body without any wasted motion. Crack, crack, crack. Ribs shattering like a string of firecrackers. The sneer on the skinny thug's face froze permanently. His eyes bulged. He didn't even get to scream. A fountain of blood, flecked with bits of internal organs, erupted from his mouth. His body launched backward like a kicked ragdoll, crashed into the mud, twitched twice, and went still. Instant kill. Clean. Silent. Invisible in the chaos. In a brawl this messy, with bodies and blades flying everywhere, nobody saw how he went flying. Just another casualty of the madness, probably caught a lucky hit from some wildly swinging brute. Kill confirmed. I didn't waste a single glance on the corpse. Immediately, seamlessly, I opened my mouth and let out the most pathetic, gut-wrenching shriek of my entire acting career. H.E.O.P. Murder. Someone's killing me. Brother Li, Savav me. While screaming, I threw both arms over my head and scrambled, stumbling, tripping, crawling, behind 2 big 8 Extremes fighters who were standing there with raised cleavers looking confused. Back behind my human shields. Perfectly hidden again. Invisible. Harmless. Just another scared fat butcher who definitely didn't just kill a man. Cold autumn rain getting heavier by the minute, mixing with all that quicklime floating in the air into a sticky white paste. Add the blood covering every inch of the street, and the ground became a slippery, squelching nightmare. Every step went splorch. My Oscar-worthy, save me, scream didn't even register in the chaos of hundreds of people trying to murder each other. But my panicked crawling performance successfully wedged me behind 2 big 8 Extremes fighters. Watch where you're going, fatso. Get off me. One of them stumbled when I bumped into him and spun around cursing. But before he could finish his sentence, two Blood River thugs came splashing through the mud with gleaming cleavers aimed at his face. He forgot about me real quick. I crouched behind an overturned pushcart, breathing hard, for show, while my eyes tracked the battlefield like a hawk scanning for rabbits. This was insane. Way worse than I'd imagined. No strategy, no formations, just pure primal savagery. Up front, the real heavy hitters, Bone Forging Realm, Tendon Transformation Realm, were going at it fist to fist, every hit accompanied by the sickening crunch of breaking bones and the deep boom of colliding chi. Back here with us, small fry. Total chaos stew. One guy slipped on someone's spilled intestines, fell down, and got trampled to death before he could stand up. Another got lime in his eyes and started blindly slashing his own teammates. Not far from me, young Master Zhou Tong was performing what I can only describe as mud ballet. Credit where it's due. That rhinoceros leather armor was solid. Tanked several heavy club hits without breaking. But his fancy gemstone-hilted longsword, in this sardine-packed street, completely useless. Too long. No room to swing properly. Get away. Don't come near me. I'm the Zhou family's eldest son, he was screaming with his eyes shut, waving the sword around like a sparkler at a festival. And because fate has a sense of humor, that polished blade was reflecting every bit of available light like a mirror. 3 Blood River veterans spotted it instantly. That kid's got money. Chop him. 3 thugs with meat hooks and iron rulers closed in, aiming low. Joints, knees, ankles. The spot's armor doesn't cover. Zhou Tong's feet slipped and he face-planted into the mud. Rolled over twice. Came up looking like a clay sculpture. Not a trace of that nose-in-the-air golden boy left. I watched with zero emotion and zero intention of helping. The sect's precious genius dying in a ditch. What's that got to do with a pig butcher? My attention was somewhere else entirely, on Big Li and Air Zhu. Their luck was considerably worse than mine. They'd tried to hide in the back too, but when the formation collapsed, they got sucked into the grinder. Air Zhu, true to form, had immediately thrown his weapon away and was lying against a wall playing dead like a professional corpse. People stepped on him, kicked him, tripped over him. He just bit down and stayed silent. Honestly, respectable commitment to the bit. Big Li, though, Big Li still had some fight in him. He'd actually made it to skin-tempering first stage back in his younger days. His chi was mostly dried up now, but years of swinging iron hooks and butcher knives meant his technique wasn't completely trash. Clang. He blocked a Blood River thug's iron rod with his butcher knife and kicked the guy in the knee, forcing him back 2 steps. You little punk, when I was slaughtering pigs, you were still in diapers. Big Li spat blood to pump himself up. But that moment of heroism painted a target on his back. A Blood River enforcer noticed him. This one was serious. Tattooed tiger crawling down his chest, dual flower pattern hand axes, and chi fluctuations that screamed skin tempering mid-stage. A veteran killer. He stepped over Air Zhu's corpse without a glance and walked straight for Big Li. Tough old bones, huh? Tiger Tattoo grinned, faked high with his left axe toward Big Li's face. Big Li flinched and raised his butcher knife with both hands to block. Bang! The impact traveled through the knife handle like a freight train. Big Li's tiger mouth grip split open. The knife nearly flew from his hands. He was old, chi depleted. In a pure power contest against a mid-stage fighter in his prime? Not even close. Big Li staggered back 3 steps, slipped, and crashed flat on his back in the muddy stones. Die. Tiger Tattoo's eyes blazed with killing joy. His right axe swung up high, howling through the air, aimed straight at Big Li's right shoulder. And oh, Big Li's eyes went wide with absolute despair. Pure reflex made him throw his right arm up to shield himself. SHHHHKK. The sound of a blade cutting through flesh and bone. A sound that crawls under your skin and stays there. Blood sprayed into the sky like a fountain. Big Li's right arm. The arm that had swung iron hooks for years, thick and muscled and strong, was chopped clean off at the root. The severed limb trailed an arc of hot blood through the air and landed with a wet slap in a gutter 6 feet away. Yeah, my arm. My arm. Big Li convulsed on the ground, his remaining hand clamping over the gushing stump, shrieking so loud and so raw that even in this hellscape of noise, his scream cut through everything. Loud old man. Let me send you downstairs to meet the king of hell. Tiger Tattoo licked the blood spray off his lips, stepped forward, and raised both axes high, aiming for Big Lee's neck this time, going for the kill to claim credit. Behind my overturned cart, my eyes went cold. Big Lee. Yeah, he could be a bit petty sometimes. Liked to pull rank as the senior butcher. Typical old-timer attitude. But when I nearly chopped my own leg off by misjudging a bone cut in my first week, Big Lee was the one who showed concern. He'd stuffed half a dry bread roll into my hand without being asked. In the man-eating swamp of the bottom tier, that half a bread roll was a kindness. And I remember kindness. Killing people? I don't hesitate for a second. But saving someone, as long as it's within my ability and doesn't blow my cover, I don't mind lending a hand either. The twin axes were already descending toward Big Lee's skull. Whoa crap. Slippery. I let out the most exaggerated shriek of surprise imaginable and, accidentally, lost my footing, arms windmilling, legs flailing, and went tumbling toward Tiger Tattoo like a fat bowling ball rolling at the last pin. Mid-fall, my hand scooped through the muddy ground. Totally random, completely unintentional, just a clumsy fat man grabbing for balance. Nothing to see here. Splat. A heaping handful of quicklime, rotten mud, and animal guts, mixed into one beautiful, disgusting cocktail, hit Tiger Tattoo directly in the face. F. My eyes. Quicklime plus water equals heat. His face was burning. Eyes slammed shut. He started swinging both axes blindly in every direction. Who threw that? I'll kill you. And in that one precious second of blindness, the stumbling, fat man, who should have been crashing face first into the mud, did something that made zero physical sense. My body froze mid-fall in a position that shouldn't be possible. One knee hit the ground, eyes cold as surgical steel, both hands gripping my dull, thick-backed cleaver. No fancy moves, just the flat of the blade, threading through the gap between his wildly swinging axes, aimed at the side of his right kneecap. Wham! Not just brute force. I channeled Major Mastery 8 Extreme's collapsing energy through the blade's spine. Silent, invisible, devastating. Crack. His kneecap didn't break. It shattered into dozens of fragments. His entire lower leg folded backward at an angle that human legs are absolutely not designed to achieve. AAGHH. A scream that made Big Lee sound like a whisper. Tiger Tattoo toppled like a chopped tree, slamming into the bloody mud. One hit. Mobility destroyed. Fight over. I didn't spare him a second glance. I grabbed Big Lee by the back of his collar and dragged him, like hauling a sack of rice, with explosive force toward a pitch-black, dead-end alley nearby. Yarju. Stop playing dead and get in here. I kicked the corpse, lying against the wall as I passed. Erju's eyes snapped open. He saw Big Lee's blood-soaked body, nearly wet himself, but scrambled after us on all fours into the alley. Inside, total darkness. The roaring battle outside was muffled by the thick brick walls like someone had closed a heavy door on it. I propped Big Lee against the deepest corner, back to the wall. He was ghostly white, shaking uncontrollably. Blood loss and agony were dragging him toward unconsciousness. Brotherly. Hold on. My voice was low and steady. My hands moved fast. I ripped the bottom half of my hemp poncho off in one tear, dunked it in the muddy water, then grabbed a fistful of half-dry quicklime from the ground. Didn't hesitate, pressed it directly onto Big Lee's gushing shoulder stump. Sizz. The lime hissed against raw flesh and open blood vessels. AAGHH. Big Lee's eyes rolled back. He almost blacked out from the pain. Hold him down. Don't let him thrash. I barked at Erju, who was shaking like a leaf, but grabbed Big Lee's good shoulder. I wrapped the torn cloth around the stump, 3, for tight loops, yanked a dead knot, and squeezed the bleeding to a crawl. Done. I let out a long breath and slid down the wall to sit. Erju was staring at Big Lee's empty right sleeve, tears and rain streaming down his face. It's over. Brother Lee is done for. How's he going to live? Big Lee was slumped against the cold bricks, gasping like a landed fish. The quicklime burn was actually doing its job, temporarily numbing the worst of the pain, keeping him just barely conscious. He looked down at the flat, dangling right sleeve, then looked up at me. His cloudy old eyes held no anger, no bitterness, just the gray ash of a man who'd accepted his fate. Brother Wong, thank you. His voice was so weak a strong breeze could have blown it apart. These old bones of mine, They're done. This life. It's over. A broken smile. Two muddy tears tracking down his weathered face. I was thinking, next month, when payday comes, I'd buy a little wine and go home to hold my grandson. He just turned 1 month old. Now look at me. A cripple. Can't even hold a butcher knife anymore. The sect doesn't feed useless mouths. A one-armed man. They'll throw me out tomorrow. My whole family, wife, kids, grandson, will all be begging in the outer city slums. Erju was crying harder now, crouching in the muddy water with his face buried in his hands. Didn't even dare cry loud. I sat in the shadows and listened. I didn't say anything like, as long as I have rice, you'll have soup, or, I'll take care of your family, brother. In this swamp of a world, empty promises are worth less than toilet paper. I turned my head and looked out through the alley toward the street. Rain pouring down, lightning splitting the sky. The battle had reached its boiling point. The red-faced elder and ringworm head were locked in a fight that shook the ground with every punch and blade strike. Mountain-shattering power from both sides. And the bottom-tier guys? The nobodies like us? They were being fed into the meat grinder by the dozen. Bodies dropping in waves. Blood running in little red rivers down the street gutters into the darkness below. No matter who wins tonight, 8 Extreme Sect or Blood River Gang, tomorrow morning, the elders and the bosses will be sitting in their comfortable chairs, sipping good tea, carving up the profits from East Long Street. And people like Bigley, they won't even get a seat at the victory banquet. The best they can hope for is a cold number on a yellowed ledger page. A line item next to a pittance of severance pay. This is the song of the bottom. A funeral hymn that never ends, written in blood and filled in with flesh. Brotherly, stop with the death talk. As long as you're alive, you've got more than most. I gripped my mud-caked, blood-smeared dull blade. In the flash of lightning, my eyes were cold enough to freeze hell over. This world is garbage. For people like us, no family backing, no connections, no safety net. If you want to live like a human being, there's only one option. Climb. Climb harder than everyone. Climb more ruthlessly than everyone. Only when you're standing on top of all of them do your bones stop being someone else's soup ingredients. Outside, the screaming and killing raged on. I closed my eyes and breathed in the cold, blood-soaked air. In the dead-end alley, Bigley was slumped against the wall with 1 foot already in the grave. Erju was crouched next to him, shaking like a baby bird in a thunderstorm. I sat in the deepest shadows, listening to the chaos outside with cold, calculating ears. The main street was still a war zone. 8 Extremes got sucker-punched by that lime attack, and the formation broke apart. But our sect has real heavyweight fighters. The bone-forging elders and tendon transformation enforcers quickly rallied and locked horns with Blood River Gang. Both sides were now grinding each other into human hamburger. Problem was, with the formation scattered, some Blood River stragglers were slipping into the side alleys to hunt isolated 8 Extremes disciples like wolves picking off separated sheep. Suddenly, frantic splashing footsteps at the alley mouth. Screaming. Thud. A body came tumbling into our dead end, sliding across the wet stones and crashing right into Erju's feet. Erju shrieked so hard, he almost left his own body. Lightning flashed. I got a clear look at who'd just face-planted into our hiding spot. I almost laughed out loud. It was Zhou Tong. The Zhou Tong. Mr. Nostrils pointed at the sky. The untouchable genius. The future elder's personal disciple. The sect had positioned him safely in the far back to gain experience on his resume, without any real danger. But when the front lines dissolved into chaos, this sheltered prince had panicked and bolted straight into a dead-end alley. And his current appearance? Let me paint this picture. That expensive rhinoceros leather armor? Slashed open in several places. His jade hair crown? Gone. Hair plastered to his face in muddy tangles mixed with black sludge and someone else's blood. That gorgeous gemstone-hilted sword? Lost. Probably sitting at the bottom of a sewer somewhere. 2 more 8 Extremes disciples, both skin-tempering first stage, both wounded, stumbled in behind him, clutching each other and looking back in terror every 2 seconds. Don't kill me. I surrender. One of them had barely reached the alley entrance when a flash of steel sliced through the rain curtain from outside. Slash. A deep diagonal cut across his back, so deep you could see bone. He screamed, collapsed face first into the mud, twitched twice, and went still. The last surviving disciple lost whatever courage he had left and crawled behind Zhou Tong like a human shield made of wet noodles. Tap, 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 heavy boots splashing through standing water. Slow, unhurried. The pace of a man who knows his prey has nowhere to run. A blood-soaked mountain of a man stepped into the alley mouth, dragging a 9-ring broadsword that was still dripping red. He completely blocked the only exit like a living wall. Shirtless, thick black chest hair, a horrible knife scar running from his left cheekbone all the way down to his jaw. His chi radiated heavy and violent. Rain hitting his skin was actually producing little wisps of steam, skin tempering midstage, and not the pampered kind. This was a double-rank enforcer who'd literally crawled out of piles of corpses to earn his position. Running away? Why'd you stop? Scarface grinned, wiping rain off his face with the back of his hand, looking at us the way a cat looks at mice trapped in a box. 8 extremes brats. So tough when you're strutting around the inner city. Today, Grandpa's going to teach you what real chopping looks like. Zhou Tong was sitting in the mud, legs completely useless, watching this killer walk closer step by step. His brain was short-circuiting. He's an A-tier disciple, a future elder's protege, a genius. He can't die in a filthy dead-end alley, killed by some nameless street thug. This isn't how the story goes. Why you stay back? Zhou Tong scraped together his last crumbs of bravery, voice cracking like a pubescent boy's. I'm the eldest son of the Zhou family from East City. My second uncle is a captain in the city garrison. Touch one hair on my head, and he'll bring the army down on your entire gang, dropping the family name. Zhou Tong's lifetime trump card. A garrison captain isn't exactly a governor, but in Yunzhou's street-level politics, even the sect's outer instructors treat him with respect. Scarface actually paused for a half-step. Zhou Tong's heart leaped. It worked. He's scared. He was already preparing his follow-up threats when, a garrison captain, Scarface's mouth cracked open into the widest, yellowest grin I'd ever seen. Like he'd just heard the funniest joke in history. Bahaha. Young master, has being a spoiled brat your whole life rotted your brain? The laughter cut off like a guillotine. His eyes went murderously cold. His 9-ring blade slammed into the brick wall beside him, showering sparks. This is a gang war. Outside, both sides have turned the street into a slaughterhouse. Enough bodies to fill a mass grave. It's dark. It's raining. I chop off your pretty little head, kick it into the sewer drain. And who the hell is going to know it was me? Tell your captain uncle to file a complaint. With the king of hell, before Zhou Tong could open his mouth again, Scarface lunged forward. One explosive step, both hands on the 9-ring blade, swinging it straight down at Zhou Tong's skull. Murder first, questions never. Standard gang protocol. Zhou Tong's survival instinct threw his body backward just enough. Crack. The blade missed his head but hammered into his right shoulder. That expensive rhinoceros armor plus the inner protective vest underneath barely stopped the edge from splitting him open like firewood. But Scarface was skin-tempering mid-stage. The raw blunt force behind that swing didn't care about armor. Zhou Tong's collarbone and shoulder blade shattered on impact. He screamed, a sound that came from somewhere deeper than his lungs, and launched backward like a ragdoll hit by a battering ram. He flew over my head, crashed into the garbage pile at the very back of the alley, and rolled around in the filth, screaming, covered in mud, with a warm wet stain spreading across the front of his pants. Completely, utterly, 100% done. One hit, and the genius prince was neutralized. Scarface snorted but didn't rush to finish him off. Zhou Tong had rolled into the deepest dead-end corner. He wasn't going anywhere.